Plus, Ultra presents the Grey Lodge Friday Night Gnostic Mass Days of Thunder Arc Null live on X, recorded for YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube at the Grey Lodge. Also, check out our website brought to you by our brother Matt Murrah at the true TRVE GreyLodge.com. You can check out all of our episodes and you can check out episodes of Threshold Saints, as well as episodes with all the brothers. And we've got a lot coming up because I've been packing the brothers onto Alcohol Reject as much as possible, and we've got many more things coming up. So, what's up? What's up? What's up? Shwa Young Magi. Yeah, it's the Aeon of the Magi, so let's fucking go. So, okay, so we've got, of course, although Mike and Joshua are here, and I'm very glad for them to be here, of course, Joshua especially, because I haven't heard from him in a while. I mean, we speak every day, but on the spaces, but I just want to acknowledge that our brother Matt Murrah had his first American adventure, not just in America, but also in the great big state of Texas. So he got to see that, yeah, actually, we fucking drive trucks. We fucking are like the movies. So I'm really glad, and I'm glad that you made it all and you got to see the Crowley archives. That's pretty fucking cool. For me, that's the biggest highlight of your trip. But obviously for you, it would have been the bands and the music and just meeting people and being in America in general, because it is like an adventure and it will be like something that you'll remember forever. And I'm really happy. So we'll acknowledge that. And of course, we cannot forget our other brother, Solar Exile, him and I are doing back-to-back fucking recordings tomorrow with Gregory Peters, author of the new Aeon Tantra. So if you know who that is, he was involved in the original Aeon of Mott working. So for me, as an Aeon of the Daughter, the true scion, you could say, this is a big fucking deal for me. And then we're interviewing Paul Fredericks of the Demonosophy podcast, who is kind of a big fucking deal in the Temple of Set. So another cool, and Paul and I actually have a great relationship. I don't think Paul's listening to this, but Paul and I have we kind of have I don't know, we just kind of get each other. It's very strange, but yeah. So not leaving him out at all, but yeah, he has spent wifey time. We appreciate, I acknowledge that family comes first. 100% money, or family, money, and then obviously the lodge. Thank you so much. And of course, Mike, he's like our esoteric art bro. That's what I'm gonna start calling him, esoteric art and market bro. Because those two things, like the art and markets, kind of go together. There's kind of there's something kind of mercurial, kind of nutsock, kind of like an interchange, kind of yesodic, right where the interchange would happen. Yeah, I think Mike is great. Mike has been our brother for many months now, and I always think he's brought an incredible vibe to the show, and I'm really glad that he stuck with us even through our growing pains, and that we could do this, because I actually love fucking doing this, and I really appreciate all of the brothers and everyone in the lodge, and thank you guys so much again. And I think this will probably be our last X recording, but next week we will be moving, hopefully, to StreamYard and YouTube permanently. But we'll see how it goes. Technology, notwithstanding, it's time, and it's good. It'll be good I think it'll be a great move for us. So we'll see. Matt and I will play with it later. And I also want to acknowledge my other brother, my favorite brother, who I often tease. I won't do the exact reference, Joshua, to save you some posterity, but I call him my Dawson's Creek brother. I don't know if his hair is still like that or not, but we'll pretend it is. James Vanderbeek, not the other guy. Anyways, it's not really like that, though. It's not really like that. That was very 90s. His is more 1991, not so 98. There's a big difference in that, if you understand. So I just want to say that I'm glad you're here, Joshua. I missed you. I really did. And I mean, you've been here every time. It's not like I haven't talked to you, or you haven't been here. You've been here. It's just that I didn't get to hear you that much. So we'll try and keep this one an hour and 20 because Matt has a flight to catch. I have to prepare because I'm very competitive, and that I can't stand if Solar asks better questions than me. So I'm working on my notes as we speak, and I just edited an episode of my show, so I should actually say that I'm Jin the fucking Ninja, ex Ninja, not really ex Ninja, retired Ninja, but still Jin, and you can find me on the Threshold Saints, which is my own show, but it's also the Brothers show because they've all appeared on it. Even Mike's coming on. I've been a little slow because I have so much going on, but Mike will have his own episodes and be featured and all of that. But I just finished an episode with Bicky, who some of you may know is a art poster, and his kind of persona is the dark emo vampire boy. So we did Final Fantasy VIII, which is really interesting because it goes along with the series that Joshua and I have been working on video games, as well as the series that Monty and I have been working on anime. So all the things kind of synthesize into that, but I think it's a really strong episode. Following up this last drop, which was on Vajrayana, um, from someone on Instagram who really was into my series on Tantra, my initial series, and so obviously I'm very weak to that kind of intellectual flattery. That is my one, maybe not my only weakness, but definitely it is vanity. So thank you guys so much. So room shout out. I'm sorry, Truth and Dies, Vanessa. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you. Everybody check out Vanessa's Etsy and her Instagram, her IG. She's really very active, much more active on IG. And I know she teased me to not say that she's gone to farmers market, so I won't do that this time. But she did have like a kind of festival season, so I'll say that. But you can check her out anytime on Etsy and IG. And if you're looking for tie dye, she's got it. Then digital tattoo. Don't know you, absolution, but welcome. And trenerism. So I know that we are mutuals, at least on your other account. So cool. I don't really know you, but welcome. And of course, Blue Hour Bookery, our good friend from the foggy hinterlands of the other coast, the West Coast. Thank you so much. And everybody check out Blue Hour Bookery, one of my favorite witchcore, cottagecore, kinocore posters. And of course, she makes beautiful books, or they make beautiful books. I don't know. I actually don't know. I said she, and I apologize if that's wrong, but I think it is, but I'm not sure. So I'm getting a heart. So maybe it's not too far off. Okay. So just thank you so much for coming and for all your support and all your retweets. That's for you and Vanessa, of course, because the show, and of course that's true for Mike, Matt Murrah, and of course Joshua the Branch, because the show really wouldn't happen if we didn't have any listeners. It's great that, of course, even I do make the shows. Obviously, I've teased this before, but I do make the shows just for Matt. But in case anyone else wants to listen, it is good that people like and support the show. And it's not a monetized show, right? It's not something that's hidden behind a Patreon. It's not something that's hidden behind a subscription. It's just me and 2 hours of conversation with people about the metaphysics of reality, which is sort of the whole point. Is like, why not have those conversations in public? I think that's a lot more fucking interesting. Yeah. Would I love to like have a successful Patreon and do like another hour and do all that and make the show pay for itself? Yeah, that would be great. But that's not really what my show is right now. So barring that, and that's not really what our show is, the Grey Lodge, which is really our show, the five of us and our erstwhile brothers. And of course, we might do that with the Grey Lodge. We might do that, but it would always be accessible. No, I would never put all of our content behind a paywall. I don't believe in that. I don't like that. model, and I think it actually makes people entrenched in their sort of it's a klipa, as we would call it, right, brother Matt. It's like if it's purely behind a paywall, if it's purely on Patreon, who are you speaking to? Speaking to your own little niche klipa audience, your fucking silo. Now, I don't hate anyone for making that, grabbing that bag. You should grab that bag. Y'all know I feel that way. But I think that when we're doing public intellectual discussions on metaphysics, we should kind of have those in public, since it does actually is meaningful for the reality itself and for our understanding of ourselves and like our place in the world. Greater questions. The Neoplatonic University, on the Aether Wave, on the app called X, the 10 and the 11. And yes, I do agree with you, Matt. And if you are interested in our discussion of Kabbalah, you should go check that out. Joshua and Matt Murrah and I, as well as Matt's fucking episode as the guest, meaning he was the, what's it called? He wasn't just like with, it was featuring Matt Murrah. Of course, Matt Murrah has been featured on my show, but yeah, he was his own guest on Occult Rejects, which I was very glad to, and very proud of him, to be honest, to be asked to be on his episode, and just that he even wanted me on, because you know I have my own thing. I don't want to crowd anyone, but Matt knows I care about him. So, but I was really proud of him, and it made my day to do that. So thank you so much, Matt. Everybody go check that out. That will obviously air on Threshold Saints and be on our website eventually. Not that long, but uh, you know, uh, I have to live my life, and I have the show to take care of. So it's got a lot going on. But thank you guys for bearing with me. I promise I've got lots of episodes coming up, and I'll let the co-hosts shout themselves out if they choose, and then we'll do. Then we'll start. I don't know. I kind of gave it a speculative title, Days of Diamond Thunder. Yes, it is a play on the Kino, on the film Days of Thunder, which probably no one born after 1989 even knows what this movie is. And to be fair, I wouldn't even know what this movie is, but I had a friend who was really into, like, I don't know, like NASCAR or something, and he made us watch it when we were kids at like a birthday party or something, like not once, but I probably watched it like 3 or 4 times, like in that 24-hour span. So I've never watched it again, and I'm not even referencing it, but I just thought, wow, it's so clever, so clever. I love a wordplay. So that's basically what it is. But I thought we would actually discuss some of the timeline shifting, some of the problems with the app, because I think that there are metaphysical ways to like sort of look at it, navigate it, and also, as I virally tweeted, unfuck the timeline. So, that all being said, we come in consent, we come in synthesis, we come in rectification, and we fucking come in Diamond Thunder. Now that sounds kind of gross, but I don't mean it like that. I mean it like we come in like the space of metamagicians surfing on the webway. So, anyways, I'm gonna let you guys go in order, but Mike, please go ahead, Joshua and Matt.
Okay, incredible introduction, Jen, and thank you for just my personal introduction. My name is Mike. Happy to be here as always. I am the esoteric slash art crypto bro, and yeah, my stuff is kind of all over the place. And the market, I feel like my content kind of follows the market. So and just the ways and things are going, and art has been kind of picking up a little bit. So I've been posting a little bit more there. But happy to be here as always.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate that. I'm trying to bring the energy. If we do a short space, like I have to, bring the energy. It can't be slow go. I only get to do this once a week, right? I only get your attention once a week. So all of you together. So I'm like, okay, I have to, it's not Jin the character. It's just me. I contain this most of the time. But yeah. Thank you, Mike. Okay, Joshua, let's go, buddy.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thanks for hosting, Jen. And it's interesting you bring up the Days of Thunder. I remember I have fond memories as a kid watching that movie for some reason. Growing up in Appalachia, I'm sure you can understand why. Uh, but was Tom Cruise in that movie? Was that the guy in the car?
Yeah, it was a Tom Cruise film about him as like a NASCAR driver or some shit like that. I don't know anything about cars, so.
Well, my favorite scene from that movie is I think is when this guy shows up. They don't really know this guy, but somebody flips a quarter out on the track, and somehow he catches it on his tire. I guess that was just like because he gets the tires hot first. Like I think he goes around the track and gets them hot, and then somehow picks up a quarter on the. Anyway, NASCAR originated through moonshining. The prohibition of moonshine and alcohol forced them to adopt faster vehicles to run from the police. So had it not been for that prohibition, we would have never ended up with NASCAR. So I always thought that was an interesting story. And anyway, thanks for hosting tonight, and it's a pleasure to be here.
That's actually that is so great, Joshua, and thank you so much for saying that. But honestly, that's going to be our theme tonight. We're going to discuss. No, I'm serious. It kind of made sense. Like Matt always says this. Everything that we do, even if it's subconscious, for the spaces, the keynote. Although I deliberately choose a keynote to be holistic, obviously. Hello. I couldn't be a Shwayang Magi if I did not do such things. But the reality also is that we've talked about this on the spaces, like kind of like a rebellious spirit, or like kind of like virtuous outlaws, Jung-Hoo, well, heroes of the rivers and the lakes. This sort of like deep, kind of like an anti-hero arc of the Aeon. If we want to think aeonically, you don't have to frame it obviously as that. I'm fine with you not doing that, but you can, since you've all been pretty much a part of like the Grey Lodge for a long time, all of you, and also part of the Aeon of the Daughter spaces in even in a peripheral way, and just like the fact that we've all sort of like even understanding that framework, even if you don't personally use it to describe like reality, that's still very potent. So what I'm trying to say is that there is an idea of this kind of like virtuous outlaw that we've discussed, and I'm not saying outlaw as in like illegal. I'm talking about outlaw as in like kind of I think there's a way to critique systems, which we have done. That has been sort of the whole show, right? Like the Grey Lodge, like we've done some very popular episodes on speculative economies, on market forces. Back at the listener like things on Twitter or X, it's like in the thousands. So it's one of them is, and one of them's at like 800 something. And not just those, we've done lots of series that have been really popular, and I have noticed that there's even a certain podcast, I won't say which one, but they've been bringing film review. They're trying to do metaphysical film review, much like how we pioneered, and we did pioneer it, and that's fine. That's great. Pop Kabbalah, as Matt Murrah would say. And speaking of Matt Murrah, please, Matt Murrah, introduce yourself and tell us about your adventures.
I'll try to be quick because I'm on the airport, and when they start talking, I think my microphone will get everything. But anyways, Matt Murrah, Jin, amazing intro. Second mic here. Very happy to be here for a little bit. I'll try to at least listen while I'm in the plane. I think they just started, but yeah, that's anyway. Checks everything that Jin said, and I'll try to listen here.
Also, check out Matt Murrah's website, Kabbalah, which is in his bio. So everybody go look at that. Matt also has Ko-Fi. So if you're in North America and you have not had the opportunity to like pick Matt's brain about something, please check out his Ko-Fi and like give him a tip. Throw a couple bucks his way. Show him the American spirit, which is really much more generous than people realize. Like really. So I'm so happy that at least he could be here for a little bit and like listen, because it is so important. Like, you know, there's 5 of us, but there's like multiple, obviously more. There's like sometimes we get a Moonblade, sometimes we get Seth, sometimes we get Leo, sometimes we get Monty. So, but there are 5 of us. So, and which is a really interesting number. And I was thinking about this because of Matt's episode on rejects. He was talking about like how many Sephira does he count in the tree. Obviously, the tree, as we would say, is infinite in its splendor. So there, you know, it doesn't really matter how many you say. But I do also agree with him that there are 11 Sephira. I do like that number. It's obviously a magic number. Obviously, I'm a Sagittarius. My birthday is perhaps in November, perhaps. But as you all know, I've changed it to be December 12th. So 12/12. So 12/12/88. So you know, that's where we're at. But I just want to say that I agree with what Matt said. I always say that the tree is a 10 or an 11. It's one is in and out. Dath is in and out. But Dath can also be the 5th, right? But it's not the 5th as in it is Gevra. It's not Gevra. It's very, very important to distinguish. But yes, you can say it's at the Pardes layer. It's the Diamond Thunder layer. The deepest blue, the deepest turquoise core. That's really clear. Anyways, that's just in your mind. So just think speculatively. Obviously, everything we say in this space is speculative. We are speculative Gnostics while we're here. So we're just going to stretch the boundaries of what is containable, possible to speak on, and also just like, bring a sort of forward thinking, aeonic idealism, I guess, to the timeline. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Hey, when you mentioned your birth year, 1988, it reminded me that this week, in lore terms, in Back to the Future, Marty McFly and the Doc travel back to like 19 something 55 or anyway. It's like 70 years since that date now, and they had to hit 88 miles per hour to achieve that. Going back in time factor, and they needed lightning, which is something that we're always talking about. So you can almost think of 88 as like a plus ultra kind of number, I think. So I just wanted to mention that.
Look, it's a double dragon year. That's what it's called in Chinese. I know this is not like as cool as like the Wingnots would have me be, but this is what it means to me. So I'm just gonna give you the Jin overview. So it's a double dragon year. It's extra powerful if you want it to be. If you're born in that year, 8 is the dragon number in Chinese cosmology. It's also Hode, so you know I am very Hode-like at times, but I also it's also the number of Vajra, and it also like reflects the shape of Vajra, right? It's like that infinite loop, that magician. So it's kind of perfect for me. I don't want to self-aggrandize too much, but yeah, it is. It is kind of like everyone has magic numbers. There's we don't really fuck with the normies. Let's be honest. We're just we're out here and we're trying to do a little metamagic in a timeline that is. It's so interesting because I always say like, oh, the timeline's so decoherent. The timeline's so incoherent. The timeline is so fucked up. And then for about a week, it was so fucking bad. I was like, are we even going to be able to use this app at all? Are we going to be able to have a space? And then, DMs got sorted out. So at least a bit, at least somewhat. So that improved. That improved the overall morale improved. And then the algorithm seemed to shift a little because if I was able to break containment, obviously I like that. And but I wasn't for a couple weeks. So I don't know if it was some like thing. I called someone a retard or who knows, probably. But I'm just saying that it did punish me for a little bit, but suddenly it's kind of been more in my favor. But I will say that even the following tab, it's not like I see any of you. I don't. I have to specifically click your profiles to see anything. That's kind of the mind fuck of Twitter because it's like I always think Matt's voice is always in my head. The timeline is what you choose of it. The timeline is it's your timeline. So you must curate it the way you want it. And he's 100% right. That's a metamagical working right there. I 100% agree. But the problem is when I first started this account, I would just be like, oh, I'm going to follow everyone back. Yes, Mike. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask you a question, Jin, about so I'm just curious, was that before or after the full moon? Because I've noticed with the moon cycles, a lot of the engagement can follow very closely with moon cycles. And I've noticed that following the full moon, things usually have like a sharp, like engagement falls like pretty sharply, like following the full moon. Um, and then it obviously as like the moon phase goes to the new moon, it continues to kind of like decrease. And that's just something I've noticed. So I feel like my mind is kind of like programmed to it at this point, where it's like after the full moon, I kind of zone out a little bit because I know that the energy changes and then people start engaging way differently. And even on certain days of the week, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and I don't know if it's just because I am in certain communities that are very close to the market, so it tends to follow that very closely. But um, during Friday, like Fridays are very slow always. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And then like Thursdays are usually more good. Like the weekend is usually not as there's not as much engagement or activity. And that's just a general flow that I've noticed. And actually just one more thing that I noticed like recently, which is very interesting. So Friday, which tends to be slow, and you would think is it's connected to Venus and money. You would think that it's good for like investments or money, but actually Venus has, I think it's like a centripetal energy versus like a centrifugal energy. I might have to like double check that. Essentially, like its energy is like it flows like outward rather than inward. So what you tend to see in the market on Fridays is that prices usually people kind of expect things to go up a little bit, but then you tend to see the market like sell on Fridays. So I just thought that was very interesting because Venus has this connection to just like money and wealth, but also it's connected to loss, which is kind of like the complete opposite um, symbolism.
So we'll do a little quick speculative Kabbalah. So Venus or Netzach, that really is not about money. That's yes. It has an element of that of wealth, but it's not really about money, and it's definitely not about commerce. Definitely not. You could say commerce is almost antithetical to Venus unless you're buying in terms of accumulation. That's a very Venus or Netzach kind of trait, I guess, or quality. Is that it really is about accumulation. Shopping. Think of like a rich Saudi. That's like a perfect example of someone who is ruled by Netzach, or a culture that is ruled by Netzach, like fancy cars, like 15 of them, all the name brands, all of that. So then we got our little buddy Seth, or my little Naga as I call him. So welcome Seth, Witsgut, and we also had Pathiagon in the room, and I just wanted to shout them out. I don't even know any of their names really, but Witsgut has been my very, very loyal mutual for a long time, and I just want to say I appreciate him. But no, like Netzach rules wealth. That's it's wealth though, like the bling, the it's the bling, it's the diamonds, and the gold and the gems and all that shit. The rollies, as I like to say, I like to tease in the chat, like show off the rollies and the kicks. That's what Netzach is. So it makes sense. And the Nietzsche cycles, the moon cycles, play such a much more important role in our. Well, it's very Yesodic, right? Like it's very much of our minds. So of course, the further you get into the dark moon or the darkening of the moon, the less you're engaged. And this is a ghost world, that is very much what X is. X is very much like the hyperspace fucking kingdom, like that we always talk about. It really is. It is your dipping, whether you know it or not. It's just so much more powerful if you acknowledge it. Just so much more powerful. You're gonna say, okay, yeah, X is a magical app. We are connecting on a magical device. Now, do you have to think of it as magic? No. Is it like techno magic? Sure. Is it cyber magic? Sure. It's both of those things, in fact. But it's so much more powerful if you engage in it, knowing that, yes, whether you believe in gross, I'm not putting down all astrology, but whether you believe in gross astrology or not, of time expressed in the 9 in Yesod. So on an app called X, it's going to be, time is the real measure of this app. Like posting on magic numbers, we've talked about this a million times, sort of like encoding your memetics with numbers, letters, words. I'm very fond of words. And so it has to have all these qualities when you're down here, but you also have to recognize that, yes, you are in the ghost worlds and you have to act accordingly. This is something that it took me like 2 years to really realize. It's not that I didn't know it. I knew it, but sort of like to put it into practice, it took a little longer. So just be aware when you're on X. That's why people act a little crazy, a little wild, not a little, quite wild, quite crazy. They would do things they would not normally do if you were around them in real. And it's because the ghost worlds have a very, we'll say, a fraying quality, like a decoherent quality. So you have to be strong in your mind. That's why I always end the space and say, like, do your sadhana, do your meditation, do your Kabbalah, go study wisdom science, because you shouldn't be here if you can't handle it. And I'm not saying I handle it all the time and I'm like the best. I'm not. I'm just saying that if you need to take a break, take a break. If you need to touch fucking grass, go touch fucking grass. That's okay. No, there's no shame in that. But know that when you're coming down here, yes, you're coming to a realm of hungry ghosts. And just act accordingly and be prepared. Yes, I'm sorry, Joshua. Please go ahead.
I actually had a note here that I think is kind of timely because you guys brought up Yesod and the moon and Venus and Friday. Yeah, and I agree. What about the market cycles? How the things kind of get tidied up on a Friday and the market kind of closes. Well, since Texas came up earlier in the conversation, I'll mention this. They're endeavoring to not kind of sort of move at least a portion of the stock market to Austin, I think, where it'll be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the market will never sleep, or at least this new market that they're creating. So I thought that was kind of relevant to what you mentioned here. And in the X-Files, I think it might have been the movie that they released, when that guy goes like on his tirade about conspiracy theories, he talks about the crash. He says it'll happen on a Friday because they have like a long bank weekend or a moratorium. So anyway, kind of reminded me of how net sacks the pillar, right? And maybe that's Friday, but then that day it would be like a broken pillar kind of symbolism, I think. But so this week, in terms of monetary news, we had the last penny was struck. Struck is a good term, like a thunderbolt. But so they minted the last penny, which used to be 2 cents, is now 1 cent, now gone. So I've been reflecting on, phrases that are not going to mean anything anymore for the new generations. A penny for your thoughts, or excuse me, penny pinching. And so also this week we saw that silver kind of broke out and was starting to make some gains. So, I was wondering about the connection between copper and silver, and I started thinking in alchemical terms like moon and Venus. And so anyway, I was just wondering if you guys maybe had any feedback. And so on the tree, where would I guess the Venus penny thing sit. Would that be Tippereth, perhaps? But it reminded me also of Charon from the Greek mythology, where the dead would get 2 coins placed in their eyes. I think it was usually 2 copper pieces. But it's like, is inflation even going to affect us in the afterlife? We're going to have to start putting like quarters or something like that. At some point, it's like, man, rates are getting kind of high these days. But anyway, thank you for letting me share.
Those were all incredible points, Joshua. So I'll just say one thing really quick because I know there are 2 other hosts that really want to go, and I will let them go, I promise. But the American money being green, so I'm obviously not in the U.S. So for us, we have multicolored money. This is more normal for like someone like Matt or like any European listeners. The multicolored money is more of the thing. But American money specifically ties itself to Netstock through its color, through its condition, through its hemp paper. Hemp is a plant of Saturn, not marijuana. Is not a hemp. Is not a. Excuse me. Not marijuana itself is not a plant of Saturn, because psychoactive drugs are ruled by Ketu. But hemp, as a commercial sort of like industrial plant, that is ruled by Saturn. So, as we've talked about, there's a deep connection between Netzach and Binah, Venus and Saturn. So you have to concretize that wealth. You have to bring it into material reality, right? And Venus also turns counterclockwise, or at least it does in existence appearance. Whether it does or not, whether it's real or not, whether it's just a Sephira, and we're looking at it and we're trying to figure out what the fuck it is, or it's like the planetary klipa. It rotates counterclockwise. So it's perfect to do finality, because this is a very Hebrew Kabbalistic idea that Netzach also brings a finality. The 7 brings the finality to things, the ending of a cycle. So it has that property that it can end things and also begin things, because in the garden, a seed can be used to plant a new fucking garden. And I also want to just touch on that idea of the Texas being that new nexus. Yes, it's very, very clear that they're going to position that sort of Gulf as which again, I'm not a Mormon and we're not Mormons. I don't think anyone here is a Mormon, but we don't hate them or anything. Like, I'm not anti, I'm not a Mormon. Whatever. But I do think that Gulf of Mexico thing, or Gulf of America, I actually do think that's very metaphysical. I really do. I sincerely believe it. It seems like very metaphysical. It seems like they're repositioning the sort of the capital. It's not necessarily the capital as in like official, but the hub, the commercial, legal, and financial, or I said commercial. So the legal, commercial, and industrial hub, we'll say, they're positioning that in that area. And so like the Mormons are so fucking obsessed with like Chichen Itza and all those pyramids in Mexico. Like they even go down and they wear like white, I don't know, whatever the fuck they wear, the pajamas or the under the drawers or the the undies, whatever, and they go walk around like those temples with like little candles. Like they really do that. So I'm just saying that it does kind of make sense. Like if you believe like the sort of like the Hapaboria, the capital of Hapaboria was like Mexico City, wouldn't you want to, or somewhere in Mexico or somewhere in Texas, depending, you would probably want to like be in proximity to that energy or that ley line, talking about like lightning, because what is a ley line? Ley lines are just energies under the earth. So this is my last point, and then I'm going to really let Mike and Seth go. You can transmute, Joshua, you can transmute gold, not with lead, but with quicksilver and fucking copper and fucking silver. That's the truth. That's why none of those like experiments in the past, like they're like, oh, it's with lead. No, no, dumbass. It is not. I'm not calling any of you dumbass. It is. That's David Rankin. And I listened to many podcasts with him lately, but I was listening to him the other day, and he was talking about how Crowley would include what he called blinds in the works. So we've talked about this. We talked about this 2 years ago. We talked about how people like specifically magicians lay klipas or lay skandhas in their work. This is very normal tantric, very normal magical behavior. Must work through those blinds, those skandhas, those klipas. I don't do that personally when we talk about it. I may get things wrong, but I try not to leave blinds. But I try not to teach you anything either. I try to just give my opinion, my metaphysical sort of appraisal of things. But I think this is the most important thing, is that all magical works contain blinds, skandhas, and klipas. Those might be slightly different things, but there's a kind of way that they're all sort of also the same. Okay? So I think Seth and then Mike.
It's auspicious that you begin speaking about Saudis, and then I immediately appear as if by magic. That's an interesting point about the observation about Austin. I suppose a push to move financial forces or sectors there, because I know, and this is like half a joke, but it's still a funny observation. I would say from the period of like 2010 to about 2020, there's a big push by the federal government to relocate a lot of Syrian and Iraqi refugees in particular. And the corridor south of Dallas and north of Austin. So, Jen, we have two things happening at the same time. We had this previous push to bring in fast airports, or I should say Sumerian hordes, people from the old world. And then now this new temple in Austin. Coincidence? I'm only half joking, but that's like kind of a funny observation.
Dude, they know it's the world island. I know you all. I mean, I don't think Matt, Mike, or Joshua, or probably even you, Seth, thought I was like. I know not Vanessa or Blue Art Bookery thought I was like nuts, because I just kind of like know them better than that, a little better than that. I don't think they totally thought I was so off base when I said like this is the New World Island. They fucking know it's the New World Island. This is not me. This is just an observation I made, but it also draws into that speculative like framework that we use. They know this is Hyperborea. Now, do they call it Hyperborea? Not necessarily, but I'm going to call it that. So they know it's like about this place. They know this place has magic. They know this place is special. They've always known it. The Mormons fucking know it. Also, the Temple of Set is headquartered in Austin. A lot of those like magical societies are headquartered in Austin. So,
wait, what? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Could you actually speak more about that? Because I lived there for 4 years. The only thing I noticed was the Scientology.
Well, because obviously there's a crossover, because we talk about this sometimes, like the new American religion or the weird American Christianity or the new American Dharma, as I like to call it. Like, yeah, it's all this fucking weird metafictional sort of like reappraisals of the tree, reappraisals of speculative fiction. Obviously, that's such an interesting name for things, right? Speculative fiction. Like, they're kind of telling you this is fucking magic. Because what is it? What is speculative fiction? What is speculative ontology? It's just a fucking framework that you use to describe the workings of being and the universe. So that's all it is. So obviously, Texas is magic. I think that's kind of our theme for tonight. Texas is magic. It's Diamond Thunder. And there's a ley line in the current into all those things. And, I was just, on my last episode, I was he lives in Colorado. So it's so interesting because a lot of fucking military things are in Colorado. Now, I'm not a parapolitics guy per se. I'm just saying that this has been like the mountain god, the mountain grandfathers, the sort of like sacred places. We talked about this last week. There are energetic places. Like it just is real. Like I know that people have a hard time. It still seems so woo. It seems so like fucking new age, like those girls on IG with big boobs and tons of crystals and like yeah, I follow some of those accounts too, like where the girls are like really beautiful or like really hot and like you know they are covered in I like the ones that covered in tattoos. I know they're kicking me out of the right wing right now. Anyways, but the you know it is what it is. So basically, it's not that. It's really not that. There's a practicality to there. It is what it is. It's just you can take it as a metaphysical truth that certain places, certain areas can be metaphysically important. You don't have to recognize them as important. You don't even have to believe in that. But there are people who do. And I think that that is kind of the overall overarching kind of theme, Seth, is like, yeah, people do recognize like Austin in particular seems to be very metaphysically active. Like if you want to like use a 90s, you probably won't even know what this means. But they would call it like the hellmouth, like for us 90s, like millennial kids. Like it's like where Buffy would be, right? So that's Austin, basically. And so yeah, it's like the Porta Boca del Inferno. I don't know. But yeah, that's what it is. It's like it's where the ley lines meet. Anyways, I'm sorry, Mikey, I've made you wait so long. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So the conversation took a turn, and I didn't know any about that with Austin. I considered moving to Austin at one point just because of opportunities and changing like the scenery. I'm from the East Coast, and I've lived in Colorado, and I can kind of speak a little bit of Colorado, but it's I think with any natural place like Colorado, especially where there's just so it's so untouched by um hundreds of energies, a lot different than in the East Coast, like where people are living on top of each other. I mean, especially like near New York and like Philadelphia, and it's not really optimized for like co-living with nature. And one thing I remember reading about in one of Barbara Ann Brennan's books. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but she has a few books. She was a really talented healer, and she was very psychic and like spiritually developed in many ways. And she was just very, very sensitive. She could see, she had clairvoyance, she could see spirits. And she talks about how cities will build up um, essentially orgone, which is just ether. You know, it's all the same name. Um, but like Oregon, she just calls it Oregon, and it will build up in the cities. And after some time, it will just kind of contaminate the city. And in the age we're living in now, we don't really know. This is not really on the minds of many people when it comes to anything. I think it's only talked about in like a very like abstract, subtle way where it's like, oh, I'm more of a city person. I'm more of like a country person. I think when someone's more typically of drawn to not living in the city, it's because of that like dense um, etheric buildup in the cities. I mean, also it's just being on top of each other and being close proximity. But if you're sensitive, I think that's one of like the major reasons why you would not want to be in a city. And there's definitely, just speaking on a lot of things that Jin was talking about, there's definitely a lot of areas that are energetically more potent. And one of them in America is Mount Shasta. And I think a lot of these, when they're talked about, it tends to get talked about in like a woo, um, new agey type of way. But these areas have some of these areas, due to whatever reason, like I don't know what makes certain areas specifically more energetically powerful, but they exist. And if you're near them, like they will catalyze things within you. And I've just read many stories of I mean, it's kind of hard to, like, if you're doing a lot of like inner work and you're meditating and you're trying to like develop things in yourself, it's very hard to do that when you're in a contaminated environment, and contaminated just in, if you're not close to energy, or I mean close to nature, where the energy is more powerful and it can allow those things to like evolve inside of you. And I'm speaking from this from a personal experience, because I've I've been in different environments where I've noticed how it's affected me, and just um the energy has like circulated throughout my body, and how being in areas where when I've tried to like do things with meditation, it's blocked me completely. And also I think also another element of it is when you're near so many people, like you have cords, and like these cords are taking energy from you as well. And when you're in nature, it's a lot more pure. So you're not getting energy sucked out of you from other people. Um, the other things I wrote about that I wanted to keep in mind that I wanted to say, so like we were talking about, this is just completely this is a while ago now, but Twitter's so destabilizing, and it can be it can really fuck with your psychology, honestly. And I feel like it's taking me such a long time to even be stable with it, like in my mind, not just like stable on Twitter. And when I was talking originally, like with how like the engagement changes, like with the moon cycles and with like the days of the week, or especially with eclipses, it helps so much to know that, oh, like I'm not losing engagement because I suck. It's because it's just volatile, and there's these like natural waves which are affecting everyone. And I've just seen this affect so many people. It's like, what am I doing wrong? Like the algorithm changed. Like did I change my content? Like no, it's just how it is. And also with people as well, but I think more the energy. It's always pushing and pulling.
I agree with that, Mike. I agree with that 100%. I do want to challenge, not you, Mike, but I just want to challenge like thinking, and maybe in a way, like, I like to be a little bit of a rebel, we'll say. Um, what if we didn't believe it? Someone was saying like about how like I thought I'm cool with him, the gematria kind of like dread warlock guy. He's cool, but he was saying like, yeah, they fucked up the DMs during the Mercury kind of retrograde, whatever, on purpose. That actually, I don't think they did it on purpose. I think they utilized this kind of like astrological cycle to actually, when a time when people would associate with disrupted communication, right? Like it could just be in our perception. I'm not saying space is fake. I don't think that. I'm just saying, well, I don't know. I'm speculative about it, but we'll say more broadly that it's alchemical. Okay. So if we associate the sort of retrograde of Mercury to be disruptive to communications, which it is, because it would, if Mercury was in fact, or Hode, as you know, I prefer the Sephira over the planets, because obviously we should go for emptiness, which is luminousness and masslessness, rather than Klopothic sort of like aggregations, which what are the planets, and they are lower in the hierarchy, of course. But it would be the paths disrupted between Hode and Yesod, Hode and Tiferet, Hode and Netzach, Hode and Malkuth, Hode and, well, that path is always blocked between Hode and Gevra, but maybe it is openable at sometimes, and it is. So I just think that they know, they sort of plan it around those things, but it could just be our perceptions, because that is so powerful en masse. Like nobody kind of rules Twitter like Astro Twitter. Like you will see very low IQ takes get 5,000, 10,000 likes. Like, yes, of course, there's always like those weird tranny accounts that get like 500,000 likes, and you're like, what? And they're like 300 followers, and you're like, well, this is clearly not organic at all. But lately, there's been like the rise of the slop accounts. That's also very disruptive to Hode. There's nothing more disruptive to Hode than kind of like this, um, the inorganic nature of engagement, because Hode like quality would be to, it is the marketplace of ideas. I know that's such a cliched sort of way to articulate it, but that's what Twitter is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a marketplace of ideas, not a marketplace of like fucking blue check jeets trying to sell Temu slop. I mean, I'm serious though. I mean, I know it's like I said in a really inflammatory way intentionally, but I'm just saying like that's contrary to the laws of the market. Because like they have blue checks, they're boosted. I'm not saying all blue checks are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they utilize the mechanisms of the market. So you could say that, oh yes, they're just being smart, but it's sort of like how Mike was tweeting today. Like the market is kind of rigged against us. Not the market per se, but the mechanisms around it. Because you can look at any society and say that, yeah, there's always been like a free commercial or free enterprise, like a free, like what peasants would think is free is like they could trade between their neighbors. So the market is kind of like, it is a kind of organic, natural interaction between man. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this because they're saying, oh, okay, well, you would trade better things with your neighbor than you would a stranger, because a stranger you don't have any social kinship with or connection to. But to go back to the point about like what Mike was saying about city and like urban living, like it doesn't really matter anymore, because we do live on the app. We do live in the globally connected fucking global village. Yes, we do. If you choose to be here, you're choosing to engage in the sort of global marketplace. And so I think like, how do we navigate this increasingly, like, yeah, censorship seemed to get better in the sense that they didn't restrict words. That's another very klipothic thing from Hode. Like, that's not from Hode. That's a klipa used against Hode like people like me who are very wordsmithy or love words very much. To like say you cannot use this word because any reason, because it's taboo, because it hurts people's feelings, because it's associated with this or this idea. So in that kind of environment where you've restricted the words, only the loudest, most the most normative voices can sort of rise, percolate to the top. But in unrestricted market of words, it will be those who have the most tools to successfully game the ladder, climb Jacob's ladder. I don't know, just some interesting ideas. Please, Joshua, please go ahead.
Really enjoyed that. And yeah, so they chose to do the whole message thing during the Mercury retrograde, but it was also encryption. So there's like an element of secrecy involved there, or cryptography. So I think that it's very mercurial in that regard, not just with the speech, but secret speech in a sense, protected speech. Those sorts of things come to mind. And I think that's at the forefront of Elon's mind, because recently he banned iPhones from his facility, like after a certain generation, because they had like some type of always listening AI or something like that. And he is good to be aware of that, because I think, I can't remember who got espionaged, but I think OpenAI sent agents into copy their Grok templates or code or whatever. So they're always at odds with other companies trying to steal things from them and take it to other companies and whatnot. Very much like umbrella corporation type stuff, when they were always, different organizations are always trying to get their hands on the virus. But so I had a little bit of a joke to palate cleanser between topics I'm going to bring up here. So what do you call it when you shape the Oregon around you? Maybe it's origami. Oh, sorry, I had to. But anyway, so since we were talking about Texas and Austin and all that, I just wanted to bring back up a topic from a previous space where we were talking about network states, because we did talk about was it Star City? I can't remember. It's the city that Elon chartered. So he, founded a town in Texas, and so I think a lot of this has kind of been following kind of his lead in a sense, and a lot of the firsts that we're going to see here, or bellwethers with technology and stuff, might be occurring in that area. It seems to be like a area that they're really trying to put on the vanguard, or the tip, if you will. Excuse me. And then I wanted to, you mentioned hemp, Jen, and I thought that was really interesting, because this week, hemp was made illegal in a year from now in the spending bill. So we've had the longest government shutdown ever recorded, praise be. But when they finally re-implement the government by approving the budget, they tacked on legislation to a budget bill to outlaw hemp, of all things. And so that's going to shut down a huge industry now, because everything in the bill sets the standards so low for the threshold that no plant in existence can meet that. So they're going to now want to destroy everything. So I'm glad you brought up hemp, because you also brought out like the outlaw aspect, and how NASCAR came from moonshine. And so I wonder what the fruit will be that will be produced because of the prohibition of hemp. I could see crypto really helping to sidestep government regulation. I'm sure it's not going to still hit the cap of 28 billion or whatever it is right now, because hemp's really thriving right now. But it turns out one of the politicians, Mitch McConnell, was paid off to, by the pharmaceutical industries, and the alcohol, I think is what it was actually, because they didn't want them putting CBD and THC in drinks. So alcohol lobbied him to put that in the bill. Because if that had actually been in debate and you have to go to committees, it would have died, right? So they snuck it in. Really dirty pool, what they pulled there. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of the outlaw thing. So, yeah, get on get on board with making sure that doesn't happen. But and the one last thing I wanted to mention was, this week we also had, during this Mercury retrograde, we also had a spike in solar activity, and that caused a lot of communication disruptions. While I was driving this week, my radio station would change and stuff, and like what my Bluetooth, I got I'm poor, so my car, I need a Bluetooth adapter. But so anyway, the station would keep changing, and so I'd have to keep putting it back to where it was, and it kept occurring to me, oh man, we're getting bombarded by gamma radiation right now. That's probably why this is happening. And so I think it's kind of that happening now. Is that an accident? It almost seems like some of these things, once in a while, these things co-occur, and we kind of get to experience phenomena that wouldn't necessarily be there had that convergence not occurred. So that might be why trines or whatever in astrology are kind of important, because it's like, normally a planet being here or there wouldn't affect you, but when it's like in a combination of sorts, it's like, oh, okay, now the ingredients are there for this to happen. And so we were getting auroras, red and green, all across North America. I feel like that was very symbolic in a sense. My photos weren't very good, but I've seen some photos that were quite impressive. And so for that to be happening, also, we had a very eventful week. So you can almost imagine, like, the red and green to me. You mentioned Crowley earlier, so I'll mention this. I know his famous equinoxes. I think that was a magazine he published. it depicted a ram of red. That's the red blood rubedo, I guess. And then the Virgo was wearing a green dress, and that's vitriol. So you use that to dissolve the gold. The gold produces royal water. But anyway, she's standing there with the scales and the sword. So that's Scorpio and Libra on either side. But yeah, so the aurora is actually, happening during the equinox, basically, in a sense. So for me, it seemed very, very alchemical in a sense too. Um, to a magician of sorts, that might be a time of great power that you could harness. Because also during that time you can cast ham radio frequencies across the earth. Get frequencies coming in that you wouldn't normally be able to hear, so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of an element there that I think maybe referenced in alchemical stuff, cleverly hidden. You mentioned earlier how sometimes there's skandhas in literature, but I think some of these events like we're experiencing now might have been necessary for certain works, as it were.
So the solar stuff will always happen whenever there is for if you want to call it deep political events, there'll always be a solar tell, you could say, because the sun is where all things are brought into synthesis. You know this, Joshua. So whether the planets are real or not real doesn't really matter. It's just like even the aurora. So I know you said red and green, and I'm not contradicting you or disagreeing, but I like to say red or they were green and pink, which is kind of like what more of the pictures I would say showed. Whether that's like real or not real, okay, but I think that the aurora has shifted colors. It has shifted since I was a kid, having lived in like the northern part of the hemisphere for a long time. We used to see them as kids. We used to like go watch them, and because you could see them, like if you were like a Shui young magi living in Vancouver, you could see them, no problem. Not always, but quite often. Toronto, you can't really see them, but yeah, you can see them from certain places, and like Haroon is from Alberta, and so you can see them all the time in Alberta, like Calgary, Edmonton, all those places. Like, yeah, you can see them like most of the year, Northern Lights. So, or I mean, the winter, obviously, but so it has shifted colors, and it is showing Aeonic colors, and there's a reason why those colors kept appearing to me, and there's a reason why they kept before really it became like the prominent Aeonic colors, and it's also a reason why they're using those colors now. Like we talked about Jay Dyer last week, how his PFP is perfectly Aeonic colors, and how he blocked me for bringing it up, and I didn't even say in a mean way, just simply mentioned that perhaps you shouldn't call people heterodox when you're a Shui young magi yourself, Jay. So I wasn't being aspersive, just giving him some like little Kabbalah notes. God. So I think those are the Ionic colors. I think that yeah, we're probably look. I don't. You know this. I think you all know this. I don't believe that reality is exactly what they or what we even experience or what we say it is. And so, but it can all be reduced to light and sound. So what is metamagic if not like the exposure of our consciousness to light and sound? Obviously color is primary because it's one of the first things we perceive. So when we're coming out of the womb, when we're exposed to lights for the first time, so that's the great work. So it's like, how do we interpret it? Like I've given you a speculative framework of Anne of the Daughter, green and pink, so you can surf the Aether wave and not be so afraid of like what is to come, because it's like it's up to us. Like yeah, there's all these. Okay, I know everybody hates boomers right now, and like I'm not the biggest fan either, but what the timeline says isn't really true either. We talked a lot about this in the past, like relative truth versus primordial truth versus like a Is truth stable? Is it a fixed point? Is it a circumpunct? Obviously, I use a Dharmic framework, so we would say that the primordial truth is like a kind of a fixed idea, but it's not fixed in a way that is really containable in language. It's Rigpa, Diamond Thunder. So, but the relative truth that exists sort of around it is that you are agential, you have free will, and you're also all aeonic, and you're all also scions. Like I know I joke in my bio, sort of joking, about being the scion, but the truth is like that's true for a lot of people now. I'm not talking about like woo woo crystal girl or woo woo crystal boy. I'm talking about, um, you know, like a lot of what people talk about on the timeline is just as ideologically flawed, stupid, contained. Not everybody. Not everybody. I'm not casting aspersions on everyone or anyone. I'm just saying that a lot of the discourse, quote unquote, the discourse, is slop. It's the same kind of slop that the blue check like AI people post. It's just a different kind. It's containable. It's to contain like people like me, like a millennial who wants to be cool or thinks he's cool or wants to associate with these people. You kind of have to play by their rules, play by their game, and I don't really like that either. So that is also interesting, just about solar radiation and just like the gamma rays. Those are the aether wave. Those are sort of the waves through which, if you are skillful, you can tame them perhaps, or you can put your own words onto them. And so the wave will carry forth the word. Okay, yes, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I don't want to disrupt your channel of thinking and speaking right there, but I just want to comment on just the slop. And I mean, maybe some other things as well, but just the slop, especially because I mean, Twitter is a lot of slop, but I think that where it starts to get under my skin a little bit is specifically when people start making shit up, especially on like the spiritual side. Like, of course, astrology Twitter is always trying to like push a lot of things that are clearly not based on anything really. I think people are just trying to act like they're sages and they're channeling it from a higher source, and they're like giving this information to their followers as a just generous like uh points of information. But especially with just the spiritual side of things as well, when anyone's talking about anything that's just esoteric and spiritual, there's a lot of grifters. And I think I think it's always going to be like this, no matter what time era you're in. I think it's just the way it is. And I think you see it even I mean, you see it in all areas, even if it's not spiritual, but especially with just like the lack of um, the foundation of knowledge with a lot of these things, it can be so easy to grift. And I think even in media, not just on Twitter, like you've seen a lot of these grifters gain a lot of um, attention and popularity um, in media. So like famous psychics and stuff. And typically they're not, I mean, I can't think of any that are not full of shit, actually. And actually there was something recently, there was one quote I saw recently, how it was a image, it was a meme, how like the Kardashians had their psychics, they had psychics tell them something, and they were all wrong. And I think people have this perception of these things like from a very shaky ground, where it's just people don't remotely understand how to even um tell what is real or not. So it's so easy to just make shit up. And even at like some of the highest like echelons of people talking about shit, like spiritual shit on Twitter, you still see a lot of this. And Twitter's just so bad as well, just because it really incentivizes slop, like incentivizes a high it just incentivizes a lot of content, and to keep engagement and to keep attention on you, you have to just keep saying whatever's in your head all the time, and it just creates so much garbage, and it is so frustrating. And I personally have my feed on the For You, not on my following, which I feel it's frustrating a little bit, because a lot of the people that I'm like friends who I enjoy engaging with a lot, I may miss their stuff sometimes, because the For You page is everything. But I think it helps me sometimes with just like synchronicities and like staying in touch with communities of, and if something breaks out of like this sphere of people I'm following. Um, but it's just so much slop.
Look, that is what Twitter is, as we always say. So you're right to bring it to our attention, Mike, because that's what it is. But it doesn't have to be, and that's why I always say, like, cultivate. It sounds so pretentious, but like, bring the kibbutz to Twitter. Like, I don't know, but like, yeah, cultivate your community on here. And yeah, you don't have to fuck with me. Like, I know I'm a little volatile, a little explosive. I'm not really, but I'm really not. And I've never really been. I will go after people if I think they say dumb shit, but like, if you say something, just at least be able to fucking defend it. If I say something dumb and someone comes after me, I'll fucking defend it, or I'll concede. That's fine. That's what Twitter is. It's about words. Use your fucking words. So, anyways, the point is that I'm really trying to make is that you should be intentional in your commitment to build networks, to build communities, to bring up like we talked about network states like extensively. And yeah, that is the future. Like, that is the future. It's like that's what we're saying is Aeonic. A speculative future of decentralized network states where people get to fucking choose, because we are agents of our free will. We are in the Klippas. Yeah, that's true. I've said this, and we said this during the Kenny G episodes. We're in the fucking Klippas. Yeah, that's like the frameworks, the ideologies, even the legal structures. I'm not anti like structure. Like, that I'm not. But I'm saying that everything that's politics is so fucking fake. It's so fucking fake. Like, all of those people, like Mitch McConnell, every single one, like all the cool, like the people that were like cool 2 years ago, like base MAGA, like let's fucking go, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're all fucking nuts. They're not. I'm not saying that they're like wrong. I don't think that. I try not to be like, just because someone's fucking nuts doesn't mean they're wrong, but it's fake. It's so fake. And so this is the point. Like, I said I walked away from parapolitics, like thinking, because I think it takes away your own self. But I also think that there is like a layer of like reality that is above the political layer, that is kind of like things that are actually happening. And you could say it's just like slow move of institutions. This is just the way it works, Jin. This is like how it is. But it's not really like that. There is like a kind of like they are using like a hermeneutic to sort of understand reality, and also like tell us what reality is. Like, we are the eternal plebes. Like, no matter if you're right wing or left wing, and like obviously I hate leftoids, but I'm just saying there is kind of like a thing where we're always trapped in like the confines of their ideas, like what they have deemed as acceptable, what they have deemed is doable, accomplishable. And I'm pragmatic, and I believe in pragmatism like very, very strongly. But I also think like, what ways can we break out of it? So I think that the only way right now is through like the dialogues and the consciousness and wisdom science, obviously. And so that's what we do, right? We bring the discussion to the public space, or at least as much as we can, the public forum, to the sort of like to like the soapbox, I guess. We try and bring it to like consciousness, and like let people engage with it as they will. Not tell people like, this is a fixed idea, this is a fixed thing. So I think that sets us apart. I think that sets immediately was what set the whole Grey Lodge apart. Is we didn't say, oh, like astrology is real, you're fixed in like your planets, you're fixed in like your fuck ups, and like no, you're not even fixed in your karma. You have opportunities to change. You have opportunities to change right now. You have. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. There are, of course, degrees to all of these things, but you know, anything that keeps you from like recognizing agency, I think, is klipa, is sort of a trap, is a mind trap, a scandalon. So that's where I'm at with it, Joshua. I agree with what Mike said. Like it's a majority is slop. But that doesn't mean that none of us post slop, and you shouldn't cultivate slop. And I agree with the thing where you should have some thoughts that are totally internal. I'm not saying negative, bad, transgressive, nothing. I'm not saying any of that. There are things that are okay to have to say every single thing on the timeline. You see a lot of people crash out because of this. Because there is kind of a desperate cry. Like even I felt it. Like not a desperate cry, but like where you feel like you're writing to someone, but it's like writing into the void as well. It's like, pick me, see me, hear me. That's a recipe for disaster. So, you know, clean it up. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that about myself. Yes, Mike, please go ahead.
Okay, so I have so many things I want to add to everything you were talking about, and I agree with everything. With just, especially on the last point there, with the pick me and the choose me and like trying to be seen. I think, when you're on Twitter and you're speaking your voice and everyone wants to get heard. That there's nothing to disagree with, but there is a point where you're chasing fame or you're being inauthentic in order to increase your engagement, or and just to attract more attention to you. There's things you can do to get people a little bit more riled up, which can be inauthentic, and then that's where it starts to rub me the wrong way. Everyone wants to be heard and push. You want to push yourself, you want to get your message out there, but keep it authentic and stick to the people that you resonate with. Like, don't just. And I think when people first get on social media, I think it takes some time to even figure out where to focus your energy, which not only like which communities, but like which people you resonate with. And I've found, I mean, it's always changing, but I found like it really refines over time that there's certain people that you're on a similar wavelength with, that it's genuine. And when you go off of that wavelength, it gets very weird and like very transactional, and it's not sustainable as well. And I think over time you will naturally like gravitate away from that. But I think some people as well are just better at being disingenuous and like pushing it, and are, will just try to like talk with the accounts that are currently the most popular or getting the most attention in order to uplift themselves. Like they're just trying to climb the ladder. And like that's this type of shit like I try to stay away from. I don't care at all. Like it doesn't interest me. And with talking about having with taking action, and this can be something that is so annoying in the spiritual communities, because I think most people are deterministic in this day and age, but when people are open to spiritual things, they tend to get a little bit more weighted to the other side of fate. And some even go to the extreme where it's like, oh, I have no free will. And there's some astrologers that literally believe this, and they would get engagement for sharing things like that, like no free will. Like it's your astrology is everything, and you can tell everything from it. And that's so off. You literally can't tell nearly everything from it at all. There's so many things that are not communicated in there, but also but there is a lot that I would say it's honestly 50-50 between that. If I were to, it's 50% determinism, 50% fate. And not just fate, that it's just like you are this combination of like energies which create your temperament to an extent and create like the foundation of who you are. And this is not just astrology, but like every layer of like your energy, like it's kind of like, I would say like 50-50. So like you do have this ability to grow, and that's really the point of the other, of like the one side. Like you have this like foundational side, and you want to change it, like in that you want, like you see it, and it's like this blueprint, and you're seeing like, okay, this is the thing I need to work on, like this is how I can change. And like someone could have the same exact blueprint, and you could be at completely different points on that level. And I was looking recently at, I wanted to mention this, and I didn't know if it was going to be relevant at all, but I've been looking at, I've been doing more like sidereal astrology, and or just like Vedic and Jyotish. And it's different from tropical and like Western astrology, because Western can be very psychological, but Vedic can be like a layer below that, where it's something, it's been so hard for me to wrap my head around this, but it's something that is like a layer below the psychology, where it's something more, I don't even want to say karmic, but it's like, it's more the like a deeper essence of who you are. And it's often karmic is used to describe that, but I think karma literally is something else, but it is something that is like a deeper layer of like the blueprint of like the way you function. And I was looking, and there's a technique which breaks down these different sidereal charts into like divisions, they're divisional charts, and each one says something different about a different area of life. So like D1 is just like the regular sidereal chart, and then D2 is like about like money and like finances, and then another one is about I don't remember them all, but like one of them is about like relationships or like home life, whatever. And then when you go down to like D30, it's about like karma and like karma, like residue, and like your shadow side. And I was really curious, like how, I was looking at how this would be accurate at all, right? It gets, astrology gets so fucked up, the more you go down the rabbit hole. It's like there's literally no logic in this whatsoever. And I was looking at it, and I was actually very surprised to find out that it was accurate in describing a lot of problems and things that I've like been working on. And like, the only way that I can um rationalize it in my head is that based on like the archetype of like my chart, it creates this like archetype of like problems and like things that are challenging for me, right? And just, if you have like a certain combination of like elements, like you just will tend to have these types of things that you need to work on. And somehow by like dividing it into 30 partitions, it creates this chart and is able to communicate that. And that was like insane to me.
So, okay, I see your hand, Joshua. I'll be really quick. So the Vedic thinking, this is what you have to remember, Mike. Hey, Hosea. Nice to see you here. I'm glad that you came. Or Josiah, I'm not sure, but I'll call you Hosea because I think that's cooler. But maybe both are cool. But okay, Mike. So it's kind of racist in what I'm going to say, but it is also true. So just keep that in mind. Look, Indian religion, Hinduism. I'm talking strictly about Hinduism. I'm not talking about Hinduism as in the Puranas, or Hinduism as in like even the fucking Vedas, okay? I'm talking about Hinduism as it is on the fucking ground. It's very deterministic. Their ideas of karma are low consciousness ideas of karma. Karma is ontological. Karma is so much higher. But yes, you're right. Jyotisha, Vedic astrology, what they call Vedic astrology, which really comes from the Atharvadas, so it's not really Vedic. But anyways, that's a whole other discussion, and I'm not even a big fan of the Vedas in general, as you all know. So, but the point is, they think of it. They've contained their system in their cultural confines. That your astrology is deterministic. That's a great word, Mike. It's exactly who you are. And it's right. It's not the psychological layer. It's not the psychological layer. That's the bullshit layer that Western people applied to their astrology. Modern Western people. I'm not saying like Western people are like bad. I'm just saying that every culture seems to like map on their own bullshit to what should be like a very like free flowing kind of wisdom science where it's constantly morphing, constantly changing, constantly in flux, constantly in sort of a synthesis, constantly engaged with other kinds of systems of wisdom science and other kinds of astrology. And also, if you believe in magic, so like a lot of the astrologers, without saying any names, but there are a couple that I have a beef with, um, some of whom you may know, but they often like to fashion themselves as great wizards, great fucking occultists of the world. Like they're selling their astrology chart, but they're also, you know, they're the next magi. They're the Shuayang magi, but they're not. Because if you think of yourself as a magician, you're either very dishonest or you're selling people bullshit. Because if you're a magician, how can you possibly think that reality is fixed? Go contrary to laws of magic, or even the existence of it, or even the existence of consciousness itself. Because consciousness is not fixed, right? It's always in flux. So if you're a great astrologer and you're selling people fucking charts and your interpretation of those charts, and I know for a fact that they do interpret those charts, like for a fucking fact, they do interpret those charts as being deterministic, as being fucking fixed, as saying, oh, this is why. There was a astrologer from our group a long time ago who was like, oh, your Venus is trash, not to me, but someone else. This is why you think the way it is. What? Huh? That's not real. That's not real. Certainly, there are planetary influences. There are planetary markers. Planets are fucking klipas. They're fucking archonic, minor archons. I'm not saying that they're like the grand demiurge, each one. No. But they are. They're minor archons. But Kabbalah, even Sephirotic astrology teaches, or Yetziradic astrology, excuse me, teaches you how to navigate them by going to the deeper level of the Sephira. Tantric astrology is exactly the same. Mike and I have like been DMing a little bit about tantric astrology and how most Indians to this day have no fucking idea. Even the outer, what I would consider the most exoteric elements of tantric astrology, they still don't get it. I saw people posting about like, oh, if you have a bad Venus, worship Lakshmi. No, if you know anything about tantric, if you know anything about tantric astrology, you cannot worship Lakshmi if you have a bad Venus. Because why? She increases the nature of Venus as it appears in your chart. So if you have a fucked up Venus, that's not the goddess for you. But it's not the idea of even a goddess. And so they even get lost in that sort of conceptual thinking. Like, oh, the goddess, she's the finality, she's the eternity, she's the fortress, she's the fixed thing. No, because even at the outer layer of Tantra, you have things like the Mahavidyas. So you have 10 ways to climb the tree, or you have the Navaratri, the 9 forms of Durga. So you have 10 forms because Shiva is obviously the 10th form, or you can say Chandaka is the 10th form, depending on your system, depending on the text, right? But there's 10 ways even in that. There's 11 ways, maybe even, if you include Ganesh. So I'm just saying that they're sort of missing the point. They're missing the thing. They're just like, they're increasing the potency of the planet in their own lives. But that has a great karmic, increasing the sort of karmic connections for the next life. And this is the one last point, and then I'll shut up and I'll let Joshua go. Hindus believe very strongly in fixed reincarnation. You are never getting out of the fucking cycle, pretty much. Yes, they'll make gestures to moksha and to bhakti mukti siddha, maybe. But for them, pretty much you're always shani maxing. You're always coming back. You're always experiencing your karma. You're always stuck in the cycle. And yes, I don't think that there are many ways outside of the cycle, because I don't necessarily think that this thinking like, oh, I'm going to break free of the cycle is like the goal. I think the goal is to like purify yourself so your karmas actually become less cosmic and more about personal agency. So, like, you reduce the amount of karmas you have to sort of enact with bodhicitta, obviously, because we use a bodhicitta framework in the lodge. So, but it's to bring love and will into synthesis. That's the point of, in my opinion, of karmic rectification. So Indians miss this, 100% miss it. They don't understand. They don't have, and they're okay. And so anyone who's trained in Jyotisha, I'm talking Westerners, or Vedic astrology, they're importing the same fixed ideas of what the cycle is, what samsara is, what reality is. They're importing all of that, and it's all the bullshit too. It's not like that's why I always say, Quicksilver Surfers, be Diamond Thunder. Nothing is in your way if you don't want it to be. Figure out a way around it. Network solutions, right? For a new aeon. Sorry, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, when you guys were talking about this Vedic astrology, I would naturally was starting to think about the tarot, of course, aligned with each of the trumps. And I think part of the interpretation of this could be, for instance, look at a bunch of different keys, if you will, pun intended. From afar, a key looks very similar to another key, but upon closer inspection of the teeth or the shin of the key, that's where the detail is that unlocks the lock. And so, from a far out perspective, I think everybody's presented with the basic challenge represented by the metal of the key itself, the rigidity, the test, but then the detail comes from our own path, as it were. Um, it's like the weather for the day, if you will. We all can tackle the weather differently. But if we do it successfully, I think that's where the skillful mean thing comes in. It's like, did we plan, prepare, assist others during their challenging walk that day or whatever? And so if we've walked the skillful means path and it's revealed itself to us as well, I think that's the aspect of the adept that's important to highlight here as well, is that when somebody is walking the way, at times it's the path is illuminated or shown to you, and it's that path is just very much like the path that the key takes, and if it's perfect enough, it unlocks the lock, and tumblers are what fit into those teeth. So you think of tumblers then as like the various trials as you work your way up the tree for that day, just like you would if the weather was rainy or snowy or whatever. And so maybe that's a way to kind of think of it, as it's like another layer, like you said, but maybe that's a way to kind of interpret it with the tarot as a tool. And that made me think also of the Fool and the Fool's journey and the role the moon is playing in all this, because you brought the moon up, and how people tend to get more engaged with the phase of the moon. Well, parasites also cause people to behave differently too with the moon phase, because as full moon is achieved, parasites get more active as well. So maybe like beefs and stuff on Twitter are probably more prominent during full moons, because of the lunatic phenomena, those who are influenced by the moon. But anyway, as far as the fool's concerned and his journey, if think about it, of course it's the fool, but when does the fool's start his journey, what phase is the moon in, actually, as he's walking the way? And is his way illuminated by the moon? And so I think there could be some revelation in there. The moon tarot is very low on the tree. And when we see the moon card, there's like a couple of dogs barking at it. And it's got some rays coming off of it. So it's not a new moon, right? So it might be waxing or waning. I think it might be waxing. But at any rate, my kind of theory in my head is that it probably comes to fullness in Tipperet and then wanes once more. And that might be why it gets, maybe it's dark around Dat or something like that again, in a new moon kind of state again. So maybe there's, I don't know. That was a thought in my head. I haven't really thought it out very, very well yet. But anyway, I just think the moon might, even though it's low on the tree, it might apply to the tree as a whole, in the sense that it reveals the logos or the letters. And perhaps there's some type of connection there. And that light is ultraviolet light as well. So there's that gamma radiation quality, the aurora quality kind of comes back to mind as well. And anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much. Thanks.
Great triple S points for you, or triple S ranking for you, Joshua. Look, the word is fundamentally also empty, just like the nature of reality, luminousness and masslessness. So of course, ultraviolet. Of course, Yesod. We live on Yesod, crystal, crystal Millennium Kingdom. That's the reality. But it's just the place of revelation. It doesn't mean we literally live on the moon. But yeah, maybe we could say that too. Who knows? But I'm saying that the reason they say that in Kabbalah, because that is exactly what you said. It's the place of first perception. It's where you cross the threshold. The bride crosses the threshold onto the carnal ground. That's a very tantric way to describe it. But you could say that the bride also crosses the threshold into greater knowledge. Of course, that can happen. And there's a direct path between Yesod and Dath. And so this is something we've talked a lot about in every single space. I think we've brought up Rahu and Ketu. There is a reason why no astrologer, perhaps like Mike, Matt, and like 5 other people, the one guy who has the gold PFP, I think his like name is like Jyotish Astrology. He's a really good Jyotish. I don't always agree with him, but he's a cool person and I like him a lot. Anyways, he probably understands this. So I'll say like there's like a few handful of them. The eclipse is fundamental to accessing that threshold. Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes. But there's another additional layer, which are called the Nitya goddesses, which I tried to sort of bring up before. But it's a grouping of 15 or 16, depending on the text, right? That talk about exactly what Mike was bringing up, the phases of the moon. So a goddess is assigned to every phase of the moon. A yogini, a dakini, every fucking phase. So but if you really understand it, I'm talking about at the deep level, it's not goddesses. Yes, but it is something else. It is also talking about the fundamental relationship with exactly what you're saying. Since the dakinis are empty, they are also the word. They're also the light. They're also the color. They're also the sound. So it is talking about the revelation of the word through the relationship with the sun and the moon, but including the eclipse. Every single person who is in our lodge, I will be so disappointed if this is not the case, because I'm gonna repeat it for the 101 millionth time. When you look at an image of Shiva, he wears the crescent moon on his crown, but it is not the crescent moon. It is actually the eclipse of the moon, because he represents in his most fundamental way, what Shiva is not the god of storms, Rudra, like the retards like to say, and he is not the god of, I don't know, whatever the Indians say he is. He is the god of secret fucking knowledge. That's what the crescent moon means. And when you see me post the more secret tantric goddesses who also wear the crescent moons in different positionalities, they are talking about the same fucking thing that I'm talking about. The nichas. They are talking about the moon cycle. They are talking about their inherent relationship with not the moon itself, but with the eclipse. The eclipse is the fundamental threshold. It is the fundamental magical experience. If you've ever witnessed an eclipse during meditation, that is the crossing of a threshold. I'm not saying it's the primary one or the most profound one, even, but it is certainly a point that you will reach. And so in iconography, when you see, I'm talking strictly Tantra only. This is not for normie Hinduism. This is not. It's more of a tantric. It's tantric only. The crescent moon is never the moon. It is always the eclipse. So just keep that in mind moving forward. I taught you a little art history. There you go. Okay, Mike, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. I originally just raised my hand because I wanted to share this piece of art, which is by an artist named Kauf Gestaltung. And it's just an abstract work that I think really captures the way that energy can move you. And it kind of captures the way of, captures the dichotomy of fate and determinism, because you have, these different like ridges within this rock, and you have like the pebbles are kind of like the forces of energy, like the different paths and like ways you can move, but you have this like gravity pulling you in like a certain direction, right? And it's you can't pull away from the gravity, like you can't deny the gravity. Like that is the force of fate in a way. It's like pushing you in this direction. It's the archetypes inside of you which make you act in a certain way. Like you can move against it, but it's like you're pulled in certain ways, and like depending on the situations of your life, or like the things that you've already like healed within you or whatever, like it changes where you are like on this rock. And this rock you could say it's almost like one natal chart, but someone could be anywhere on this chart, right? So it I think it's just a good representation of that. And um that was all I wanted to say. But there was like some things like that you guys were talking about the moon as well. And I'll just leave it as that.
Mike, no, you bring up a really fundamental point. So there's actually, you brought up three things that I think were really important. First of all, this is the last point you kind of said, but I'm going to use it as my first. So building the paths. We are all sparks of splendor. There are no such thing as NPCs. Yes, there are many retards in the world. Yes, many such cases. But the truth is, we're all sparks of splendor. Everybody has the possibility, the capacity, the potentiality to do more than they believe. It's just unfortunate we live in such a cleptothic cycle right now. But we are fortunate because, as I've always said, Sayana the daughter. So we can go out there and use our psychic abilities, our psionic powers to break klipas. So art has a fundamental property in doing that. Fundamental. Like without art, iconography, I would not be half the magician that I am. Without knowing the sort of the tantric subtleties. And that's not something necessarily I learned in university or anything. Like, yes, I did study it, but praxis. It came through sadhana. Didn't really, the subtle elements, the secret elements, those started to make sense. I know that sounds very strange. Oh, you studied Southeast Asian tantric iconography in university, Jen. What are you saying? That it's like it's are you trying to like say you're the great guru? No, I'm not. I'm saying that I understood what they meant in a symbolic level, but I didn't understand the kind of empty nature behind it, the subtlety of it, the colors. Like, yeah, there's an academic explanation for that, but it's not. It's all things in Tantra, inner outer secret, right? So there are at least 9 layers, maybe 7 layers, but there are at least probably more, closer to 9 ways of understanding, maybe even more. So if you understand that, the academic way can only ever teach you the inner or the outer. Can never really teach you the fundamental meaning of things. That's about experience. That's about Rigpa. That's about something higher and something better. But art is sort of the hermeneutic that contains that. That's why I really, really hate all these people talking about like the degradation of culture, like society sucks, culture sucks. Like, you just sound like a fucking leftist. Go out there and write a fucking book. Go out there and produce art. Go out there and produce a fucking podcast. Go out there and produce 2 fucking podcasts. Like we do. Go out there and build a business. Go out there and build something. Don't just complain about it. I'm sick of that. It's like lacking agency. Yes, everybody has obstacles, some greater than others. There's always ways to do anything you want. You're aeons. I mean, it's the aeon of man. Like, even the left-hand path stuff, like like the Shawnee and like Saturn and like there's all those people that like are like, oh, I'm like we're gonna worship ourselves, and like that's fine. You should. You have all the potential in the world. Like, I think that's important. Like, I think that Binah, Saturn, Shawnee, all those things teach you something. I just don't think that we should say fix there either. Like, Silver Surfers, Quicksilver Surfers, like, be free in the world. Don't be so fixed, right? So I think that's also what you're talking about, Mike, is like conceptually, that's the problem with like sort of the more traditional forms of art. I'm not talking about tantric art, because tantric art is inherently transgressive in its context. So it always has the possibility to break out. That doesn't mean it can't take new forms. Of course it can, just like American Dharma can take different forms, right? But then you also must say that art in a more traditional form does sort of, it can be an inhibiting force. It can actually be Saturnian at a point. I know everybody hates Saturn. They all blame it on the Jews. That's fine. Saturn's not really about the Jews. Saturn is much more influence on Indians, if you want the truth. But we won't get into that right now. But the reality is it can be limiting. And so we should try and push boundaries. I'm not saying transgressive. I'm not saying like we're all going to be like Telemites or like Satanists and like doing like art production and some like neo Andy Warhol. No, we don't need to replicate the modalities of like the 20th century. It's like taking things from the past, like we always talk about, like with wisdom science, like basing it in sort of like a material foundation, but then also bringing like our aeonic thinking, also bringing the fire of perception, also bringing discernment, also bringing loving kindness. So I think that that's a recipe for success, a recipe for something new. And like, what is more speculative fiction than what we do every week? Except we don't root it in sort of like the imaginal level. We sort of root it in material reality, just like I always say, Path 22, root it in pragmatism, and so referencing the real world. But we're expansive. We're the arrow flying across the water. We're the arrow from the fire across the infinite ocean, where the lightning fucking happens. And what is the lightning? The lightning is perception. It's the Gevra and the Hesed, the Gebura and the Gedula together at where? Tiferet. But things can only happen there if they've been rectified in your own mind, at Yesod, at the moon. So it's like what you said, Joshua. The tree is so dynamic. Whether you're very like Matt, like I would never counter signal Matt. at all in any way. And what he says goes for his system. But for the way I think of it as very dynamic. And he's pushed me a lot into thinking it more and more dynamic. But I don't necessarily take it as dynamic as him. But I do recognize that it is not fundamentally even about the Sephra. It is, whether we're talking like Tantra or Kabbalah or just magic in general, it is about the light traveling through the paths, which is also fundamentally the word. And the word is fundamentally empty, which means it can always be recreated. It never goes away. People always you see a lot of trad accounts being like, oh, like the West has fallen, America's cooked, Canada's cooked, it's finished, it's over. Like, yeah, Naga, that's true. That's not, we shouldn't cry for it, because apocalypse is revelation. So what are you going to do with that information? What kind of society do you want to see? What kind of society do you want to build? Like, don't be limited. Don't put like the limitation where you're saying, oh, we must recreate the past. No, the past was for people of a certain consciousness, a certain conception, a certain relationship with technology, a certain relationship with their wisdom science. But we have our fucking own. That's what I think. Sorry, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And just anecdotally, something that I've personally experienced, I mentioned this before some weeks ago, but recently having become debt free, I think that is also a very interesting thing to point out, that if you can achieve that right now, that really puts you at a good advantage for whatever is coming, because economically or whatever, apocalyptic or otherwise. And I never had that sense of relief. That I know this. I don't hate talking about money and stuff, because that's not really what I'm interested in a lot of times. But I did feel psychological relief when becoming debt free, and I was like, oh, now I can own land and stuff. So, and things like that became more important to me, and I was like, God, that's very Malkuth. And so I think there's something about sovereignty that's connected to that. And so I think that if you can simply own land and have establish a house, quote unquote, even in astrological terms, which when you do that and lay the stone and stuff, you can all do all that intentionally with astrology in mind. But I think that if just achieving that, you create like your own little miniature country, if you will, or kingdom. And so, that in itself is what you can possibly achieve in the United States. And I think that's the best thing you can focus on and do, is just to be as fully capable as possible. So for me, that has been very liberating to know that is even possible. The American dream, a lot of times, is impossible for people because of the shackles of debt. And what I find so curious about this is because, being that I spend so much time with you guys now in these spaces, I think very Kabbalistically. So this happened to me while Saturn was in retrograde. And I thought that was kind of funny because, this is also colored by some of the other things like in the news, like with the budget. That's very Capricornian, in my opinion. And of course, the Saturn retrograde is taking place in Pisces, which for me, I mean, I'm not an expert astrologer or anything, but to me, for it to occur in Pisces like that, I'm kind of hopeful, because I don't like the ban on the hemp thing, right? So maybe the wishy-washy emotional nature of Pisces, I don't know, non-committal, I don't know what the mutable, let's just say that. Maybe that it'll get amended out or something like that. Who knows? Because there is some attention being given to it. So I'm hoping there's some malleability there with the budget. If I was going to make a prediction, but I think that element to point out about Saturn is so important, because it's like your skeleton. It's kind of like the economy in general. It's like the backbone of things that you kind of have to operate within and deal with. And I just feel like having that intimate experience with Saturn like that, in a way, it's like it no longer seems like such a, like you said, it's almost like you develop a a fondness for the structure, you know, that it offers, like a parent in a sense would do. And that's, you know, how we view God the Father, you know, in Judeo-Christianity, for instance. I think that is very Saturnian in a sense, you know, being provided that guidance or structure. So I just wanted to point that out because uh, I it you know, I enjoy novel experiences, and for me it was emotive and psychological, like I said as well. So Kabbalistically, it felt like a fruit of sorts had begun to produce, in a sense. Um, but I wanted to mention one more thing, and that was about and the retrograde I think takes place until November 27th of this month. So maybe the lack of censorship, and you know, the release of a lot of these YouTube channels have been coming back. One of my friends had his channel banned at like 95,000 people or subscribers or whatever. Well, he just got that back, and you know, so I've just seen a lot of that too with a lot of different people, and I think that release of restrictions is very symbolic of this Saturn retrograde as well. But anyway, maybe you guys could add to what is the Piscean element, because I don't want to be negative with any disparaging remarks about Pisces, but I was just curious if there was more to add. Like, is that characteristic of it? Is this like cancel culture? Is something like emotional? And you know, the banning and censorship. Anyway, didn't want to ramble too much. Thank you.
You don't ramble at all, honestly, Joshua. You really don't. You've really become like a concise, excellent. I don't know. This is like, how I think of it. I think of it as like Bell Art Redux. Like, we're fucking doing it. Like, talking about magic, like freely on the Aether Wave. Like, yeah. So I don't think you ramble at all. I think you're like a great co-host. I think we're like, making Metamagic history. I think that. So, always glad to have you here. Okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, I actually, I'm remiss. I had actually two more notes. If you don't mind, I'll read these real quick. Um, so earlier I talked about Star City or whatever Elon's new city was. I heard him recently mention something. Maybe it was on Joe Rogan. They were talking about uh, where you get nickel, because we mentioned nickel earlier as well. Is meteor impact sites, and so that Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America area may in fact be a meteor impact crater, like the Yucatan Peninsula, you know. So I wonder if maybe Elon is aware of the fact that there might be some asteroid ore, you know, to mine there, and that might be another reason why he built his city there, you know. So I just wanted to offer that. And the one last thing I noticed I had up here was about, I heard somebody talking about filtered sunlight and how if you grow your plants under a canopy of filtered sunlight, you can get an enhanced growth because I guess some of the radiation, gamma radiation type stuff, ultraviolet, is not necessarily very helpful for the plant, and kind of stunts its growth a little bit. So you think of it like a stress, I suppose. And under this filtered sunlight canopy, um, this plant was able to get like really enormous and produce huge amounts of fruit. But anyway, this guy was speculating about how, the conditions of previous eras of Earth's, climate or whatever we want to call it, where there might have been less air pressure, higher concentrations of oxygen, filtered sunlight, perhaps. That was the thing he really focused on. And so I just wonder, if there had been an element in the past of some type of what was the atmosphere like? Was there something going on there with? Did we have filtered sunlight, and things were able to grow bigger? And so I was thinking of the moon too, and how things increase in size, with the moon, of course. But anyway, those were just some of the lingering thoughts I had. So thank you for letting me add that.
Thank you so much, Joshua. First of all, hemp. So, look, a lot of the tradcon thinking is going to be like totally like a shoot from the hip, kind of speculatively. Look, marijuana is useful to unlock your consciousness. We all know this in a degree, whether you partake or not partake. Now, is it something to rely on? Probably not. Just like anything, you don't want it to become a klipa or a crutch. I do partake, as everybody knows. I am currently not stoned on weed, and I'm not really stoned. I'm kind of just like free flow, and I just aided myself with something. But anyways, natural. You all know I'm very organic. I'm very barefoot granola, right? We always talk about this hippie John Bircher. But yeah, so it's definitely it's a plant. We'll just say, but maybe a little not it's not a marijuana. So look, they always want to restrict ways to sort of expand consciousness. Now, everybody on sort of like that side of Twitter will complain and be like, "Oh, everyone's a stoner. Everyone's like this. Everyone, oh, they all hate tattoos. They all hate this. They all hate this." Like, grow the fuck up. It's 2025. Like, everybody smokes weed. Who cares? That's not what's hurting society. Like, yeah, there are negative effects. There are negative fucking effects with everything. But to restrict hemp is, again, how can you bring something into the golden? Okay, so you want to talk about like seed kang, like we always joke about, like we was kangs and we was seed kangs. Like the Scythians used fucking marijuana, like that was their one of their like primary spiritual or shamanic technologies. Very obvious when you look at like the Tocharians and like the like Taoists and like the Manchurian Tunguskic shamans, like they all use weed, they all use marijuana. That's was their primary thing. The character in Chinese Ma is one of the oldest characters of all. So it's not something evil. It's just a tool like all tools. You can misuse it and you can also use it for to expand your consciousness. Maybe you smoke once or smoke for a few years and then you give it up. That's fine. Maybe you smoke once and it expands your consciousness. Maybe you smoke and you have a really bad experience and you never want to do it again. But even in that bad experience, it sort of expands your consciousness to the possibility of reality, and that maybe your mind is in charge of reality so much more. So I think that when they threaten or when they attempt to ban things like that, I think a lot of that is their anxieties that people will kind of be able to expand their consciousness and sort of see that reality is not quite in the deterministic or the legal or the material frameworks that they want to promote. And it's not even about conservative or progressive. It's nothing to do with that, really. It's like you should have sovereignty over your own consciousness. So this was point number 2, and then I'll let Mike go. We've talked a lot about this, and Solar brought it up, so I'll reference him. But like the Ernst Younger stuff and the Anarch, that is sort of what I think is like if you want to say like an overarching meta politics or the meta political goal for the Grey Lodge, this is what I would encourage for all of you and for myself as well, is exactly what you said, Joshua, is like home ownership, is like land ownership, is like financial stability. It comes and goes. Like I am more with Matt, like on this, like you can attract it, you can spend it, it's gonna come and go. This is a much more Chinese way to think about it too. So it's kind of interesting. But it comes and goes, but you should achieve, like you should aim for that. And also like the libertarians are right about at least one thing. Debt is slavery. There's no question about it. Debt is slavery. That is so clear to me. I'm not saying all debt is bad. I'm not saying that. In a degree, you need debt in like a sort of like that GDP economic shit that I don't really understand. And I admit that I don't understand it at all. But I just think like on a personal, we're talking about the anarch level, the sort of sovereign man level. Debt is a yoke and not a good one. So I agree, and I think that it also gives you a degree of freedom to own your land. Now, of course, there's all these other obligations that come with it, and the house is very expensive, and I understand very fundamentally that all of those things are true. But I'm also saying it does grant you a degree of relative freedom, and it also grants you a greater degree of sovereignty, which, of course, Joshua referenced by saying it is the Malkuth. Yes, the natural extension of the Malkuth is your own home, is your own land. That's it. So if that's the natural extension in like we're saying like pro-Aeonic terms or Aeonic terms, that's probably what you should go for. Now, is that going to be achievable or like doable by everyone? I don't know. It's your reality. You got to make it for yourself. But I'm saying that is you could say like a greater material aspiration because it also has metaphysical implications. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, that was great, and especially just talking from the financial freedom part, and Joshua, you as well, with how it's giving you not being focused on it, but now that you've got it, it's giving you so much freedom, and it's allowed you to have more peace. And especially when I was in school and I was trying to figure, I mean, money was never really a, a major focus in any decision I was making ever. Um, However, after I was put into like I was in the real world working a 9 to 5 job, right? And I realized like, like I am only making this much money. I can only, it would be hard for me to move to other places that I want to go to. Like I was very restricted and it was like this many years and just everything felt so restricting. And at that point, it was like, wow, okay, like money, like I was not thinking about money the right way. Like, and I think when you are not thinking about it at all and not making any decisions on money, I think that actually can be a bit of an extreme on the opposing end of the side. And I see that um, people try to just completely be aloof to money and like be higher than money. It's like, I'm better than money, like I'm chasing I'm like moving towards my dreams. Like I'm doing, like you need money in this world, unfortunately. And it allows you to do whatever you want to do in a more refined way and to have peace and to enjoy life. And obviously that can go to the extreme as well. And that's where I think a lot of the other side of the extreme originates from. Um, and even with I've heard a lot of billionaires talk about this, where they Mark Cuban has talked about this, where he says, "Oh, those billionaires that only like there's certain types of billionaires that are like so obsessed with money that it's just like it's just excessive." And this is coming from someone who has like a shit ton of money, especially he's on Shark Tank, like he's throwing all this money, like investing in all these things. But there's a line where it's not the amount of money you have, but it's like your relationship to it and like how you're letting it control your life and like you're in the situation, like the way you behave. And you can have a very healthy relationship with money and have a lot of money and like take advantage of opportunities. And like you should always take advantage of opportunities. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where it's like I'm not obsessed with money. I don't make decisions purely on money. Like I'm not like, okay, how do I just get the most money? It's more just like,
Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. That was totally my bad. My phone locked. I locked it. I was playing with the buttons and I locked it. Yeah. We'll just wait for Mike. There we go. Mike and Joshua. Sorry about that, Mike. That was totally bad Jin move. Well, it happens. And anyways, so sorry, Mike, please finish off what you were saying before I rudely interrupted you by closing the space accidentally.
Well, I actually had something to say. It looks like he dropped for a moment, so if you may, or if I may. Oh, there he is.
Oh, I mean, go for it, Joshua. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. So there's a Bible verse that came to mind where we were talking about that, about the debt and the wealth and so on and so forth. And one of the realizations that I've kind of come to is it's like the emperor. He is seated in his throne within his house, so to speak. And so as long as you kind of, I've kind of viewed it more as accumulation of wealth for the home, but not necessarily outside the home, except when you're a traveler or whatever. Um, and so it's like a concentrated thing to cover like expenses and so on and so forth, and participating in that mundane, as Mike was kind of referencing, I think. And then what this Bible verse is, so this Bible verse then is kind of in contrast to that. And I'm going to see if I can post it real quick here so I have it in front of me. It says, do not take along any gold or silver or copper in your belts. Take no bag for the road, or second tunic, or sandals, or staff, for the worker is worthy of his provisions. And then it continues, whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy there and stay at the house until you move on. As you enter the home, greet its occupants. If the home is worthy, let your peace rest on it. But if it is not, let your peace not, or excuse me, let your peace return to you. In other words, I guess leave. So I just wanted to share that because I think that's applicable to the fool's journey, is that um, this to accumulate wealth is the emperor seated, right? Not necessarily mobile and moving. But then as the fool, you give up your wealth, and it's the very Buddha, right? Um, and so you rely then on the divine to provide you what you need in terms of resources. So I like to think of as money not only addressing your needs, quote unquote, but all more your wants. You can more easily participate in Maya that way, right? A little harder to participate in Maya without any tokens to feed into the machine, right? Anyway, I just wanted to share that thought about the Bible scripture and how it maybe pertained to the fool's journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. And again, I apologize. Sorry, boys. Look, you're right, Joshua, that you need. I'm okay. So I'm going to let Mike finish his great point, and I apologize, Mike, for interrupting you with like my stupidity, my technological unsavviness. Remember, retrograde does not affect technology. Mercury in retrograde does not affect technology. It only affects retards. You want a gin bar? There you go. Okay, so I kind of think billionaires are bullshit. I know this is going to sound very Zuccotti Park. We joked about this last week. Like everybody has their like fake sell Zuccotti Park arc. But I do kind of think billionaires are fake simply because they're not organic. They're kind of, it's all propped up by different, like InQtel, but it's not just InQtel. It's not just the CIA. It's all of them. It's all of them. They all have their own little players in the game, and we call them billionaires. And it is what it is. Like, look. But I do think that wealth. I think I think you should. I think you should think of yourself as wealthy. I think you should aspire to that. But I think it's also a tool. Like you could say that money is very tied to Rahu. Actually, very tied to Rahu. Like money itself as a technology, a medium of exchange, a physical medium of exchange. If you think of it like that, well, the dragon is very dangerous, but he's also very powerful. So it's all about how you use it. It really is. So this is where like that kind of idea of free agency comes in. So you're going to wield the dragon? Are you going to wield those fat stacks? How are you going to do it? You're going to blow it all? You're going to snort it all up your nose? Are you going to over leverage. You know, there's so many different ways to like misuse, mishandle, and misappropriate, and that's what makes Rahu so dangerous. Because most things are a trap, and then there's like a few things that aren't. So I think that we have to. There's a pragmatism. There's a pragmatism involved in that sort of speculative wealth building. And I think that's even like what Mike was even touching on. And it's just as like so unfortunate that I'm not anti Elon or like I think it's all fake personages. That's just my personal opinion. You don't have to believe that. That's just my speculative opinion. But I think it's all fake. I think these people are just like sort of narrative guideposts, you could say. They're each shilling their ideology or their story, and it's like, do you want to believe it? Well, I'm not saying it's all fake. I'm not saying every single one of them shows a fake ideology. I don't think that. In fact, I think that they're selling possibilities. I think that they're selling their own ways of thinking and their own ways of wanting the world to be. So it's very imposing their own will or their own story onto the world. Because the more people believe in that story, the more real it becomes. So they're kind of like perfect salesmen for, speculative futures. So that's sort of where I'm at. It's better to have money than not. Absolutely. 100%. Like, no question about it. We also have all the resources. Like, you brought up nickel. We have all the fucking resources. Just fucking. Okay, it's not even about Trump, but just like, if he just took Canada, literally, it would be like we could supply like all the oil for like 10 million more years or whatever. Like, I don't know, but like, yeah, hundreds of more years. Hundreds. It really is like hundreds of more years. So, like, why not? Why not like build a Dubai? Why not build like a Dubai on Turtle Island? Like, why not? I'm not talking about like tech utopia in Texas or whatever, but I'm just saying like, like there's not that many people here. This is a point that I wanted to bring up way earlier, probably at the very beginning. But like, yeah, this country is not full, and it is not conquered either. Not conquered really. Like, yes, that's part of what the mythologies of the West, and I have no problem with that. Like, I don't think it's bad. I'm not saying it isn't like a pejorative. It's like, oh, the land is unconquered, so all the Jeets can come here and claim it. No, I'm not saying that at all. Totally the opposite. Send them all back. But I'm also saying that like we do have to do that in a way. Maybe it's just speculative. Maybe it's through Dharma. Maybe it's through Tantra. Maybe it's through like wrathful practices. We tame the yakshas, if you want to give it a very magical layer. But it doesn't have to be about that. There's so much here that is like Mike was talking about living in Colorado. Like, there's so much open space. There really is. There's so much resources. There's so much potential wealth. But it just sort of sits below. It sits even below the Babylon, that sort of network Babylon, we'll call it. Rules and regulations, and only megacorps can do anything with it, and it can never be like entrepreneurial. It's like always like fake bullshit. And the reality is like we are the people of these lands. I'm talking about like people who are born here, people who fundamentally identify as such, people whose consciousness was like maybe sort of where they became more fundamentally who they are. So, I think if you're foundationally New World, I think like we should want to rid ourselves of what we call in the group chat popularly as a Marazog, but what I like to call better, maybe, or in my own appraisal, is the sort of like the Babylon, which is also the Klippas, but it's also navigating them too, right? It's not, we don't seek to destroy, we're not leftoids, and we're not like accelerationists either. It's like a middle of those two things where like a middle path approach where we're going to like take of both ideas and say, okay, how can we implement them pragmatically? So I think like, yeah, I think that this land should be free. I think it is. I think it wants to be. What does that mean? Well, that will mean different things to different people. So I just think that we live in a very incredible place that we do not fully understand, just in the same way we do not fully understand our own consciousness. And we have to think outside of the boundaries that are presented to us, not in transgressive ways, but just in speculative ways. Okay, yes, sorry, Mike, please go ahead. I apologize again.
No, it's okay. I mean, I kind of lost my point at this point. I mean, I think I finished my point originally before the space was cut off, but I just wanted to add a little bit more about money and like my relationship and journey with money so far, and like growing up. And I remember when I was working, I used to work in a restaurant, and I was working as like a host and like a um was, I was also cleaning tables, and I would just save all my money. I literally wouldn't spend anything. So it was like, oh, I literally had no, there was like no savviness, but there was also no greed at all. It was like, it was kind of pure in a way. And I would just save all my money. And I was literally only making like 725 at that time. And I was saving like a lot of money for the amount that I was making. And at some point, and I never had anything, like there was never anything I wanted to buy. But I think a lot of people, like when you have to, like, it takes something for you to really learn, either to be savvy with it, or to have to like face like your demons with it, with like greed and things like that. And I think it can be easy for a lot of people to speak on it if they've never had to face it. So and you see this with when people win like a shit ton of money, they have no idea how to handle it, and they end up losing it, and then they end up broke, like people that won the lottery. And for me, like the first thing that even was interesting for me, and like what really kind of like brought like the demon out of me, was like actually like collecting art. And because that was like the first time where I was like, oh, I actually enjoy this, like it's something I like spending my money on. And not like where it was like toxic, but it was like something where it was like it started to get like I didn't know how to handle my money like well enough, to the point where it got I had to like learn lessons around money. But I think that's a lot of people, and some people go through life and they have like these types of um I don't know what you want, like compulsions, or just like like not balanced ways of like handling money. And I think people, especially who come from like more prosperous backgrounds, they just have everything kind of like handed to them. I think they don't remotely understand the value of money and how to handle it as well. It's like just a lot of like um exorbitant spending, and um it can go out of control. And you see like generations tend to lose their wealth, like a rich family who like gives the money down, inheritance, like they tend to lose the money because they don't know how to handle it. But that's all I want to talk about.
Okay, I've got a really controversial opinion that's going to get me kicked out of the right wing again. There's nothing wrong with new money. There's totally nothing wrong with new money. It's so American. We're a new country. Money, this is a very old Chinese thing. You want to talk about, like, we always talk about like Taoism and like Buddha, obviously Dharma. In Chinese thinking, wealth only lasts 3 generations. It's an old saying. I think it's probably predates Confucius. So the reality is like new money is where it's at. And so new money is very American. There's nothing wrong with it. You want to flex your rollies, your kicks, and your rod. I don't have a problem with it. I think that's cool. Honestly, we're like my generation, we grew up on like BT and like what was that MTV show, Cribs, and all that shit. Like, who cares? Who cares? You want a big motherfucking house? That's fine. I don't want to pay for it, but like if you can pay for it, good for you. Good for you. And like you want to spend your money like that, that's fine. And so I think that that's a part of what you're talking about is like, because I'm going to say were, but I know some people will, I know the trad LARP aristocrats, I don't think anyone listens to this that or identifies that, but if they do, I think that they will be uncomfortable by saying this, but because we are a new money culture, we probably have to have different and more fundamental conversations at home. It starts at home, but it also could be extended out to like other kinds of ways that we speak to each other. And like maybe what we're doing right now is like Mike even brought up like the key word, which is like savvy, like how to make money with money. Well, nothing more American than that, is there? And so I think that these we do have to like kind of redefine our relationship with these things, not just personally, but also like in a societal level. Like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Why did that get, why did we all think that that was so bad? Like, why did our generation grow up thinking that was like negative? Like, that's not fucking negative. That's called like life. That's called like survival. That's called like making stacks. Nothing like, yeah, that's good. I'm not saying greed. But prosperity is good. What's wrong with that? There's nothing negative Kabbalistically. There's nothing negative in Tantra about that. It's all about how you use it. Are you using it to, you know, even the question of like labor right now with the H-1B thing. That's like a hot topic, right? Well, it's so fundamentally easy to solve. You just end all those visa programs. You maybe have to do some FDR shit. I don't know. I'm just saying speculatively. But maybe you have to like do some like remixing in the kitchen and like do some like training programs or do something like that. I don't know. But like there's some things that are fundamentally broken that we kind of need to fix, or we're just all gonna be like market players and we're gonna do this kind of like speculative economy, which is fine too. That's very American as well, like Joshua brought up. Like there is something kind of American about that bootlegging whole history. There is. And so I just think like we have to like kind of redefine our morality and ethics around money, because I don't think that we're kind of like people. I know it's like very passe now to joke about being fatherless. That's like the old, that's like from 2 years ago on Twitter, and everything from 2 years ago on Twitter is like 10 years in the real world. But, we don't have really probably good, we don't probably have a well-defined ethic and morality around money in like a sort of like I'm gonna posit it in like an aeonic way, and like for the new century. We probably don't. There's probably too much discursive, like far left, far right, kind of like thinking around the subject, and we probably have to like sit down. I'm not doing it, but I'm saying for people who are interested in that, they need to sit down and kind of like figure it out. And it can't just come from one like text. It can't just come from the Bible. It can't just, it has to be sort of like defined in the terms of 2025, or at least in this century. I'm not saying you can't draw from those ideas. I'm saying that it maybe should be more about how we actually interact with money and and the market in a pragmatic and like actual way, not just like fake. And like we was Kangs, we can't just project from the past. We have to like bring things into the future. That's why we always say speculative. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that. Oh, actually, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, that is okay. So maybe that is our sign from the universe that we can close out. We kept it going quite long, which is fine, because I really wanted to hear what you and Mike had to say, since we don't always get to hear from you. This is obviously like one of my favorite couple hours of the week. So thank you for everybody, and
Oh,
thank you.
I do.
Oh, yes. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I was just going to recite the wise words of the Wu-Tang Clan, actually, to diversify your bonds. And so I've begun to see wealth not just as money, but a diversification of wealth. And that adds to your resiliency. And so I think simply having resources, uh, whether that be a jack and spare tire in your trunk, or, orchard at home in your backyard, whatever. Wealth takes various forms. And I think anything that adds to your agency is kind of a really good definition of that. If it enables sovereignty, I've really, as I've matured and gotten older, because when I was young or younger, yeah, I was so poor that money meant different things. It was more of a number, you know. But as I've gotten older, I've like, oh, it's actually I've accumulated wealth in other ways, you know, like through firearms or silver, or gold, food, you know, being ready for the apocalypse and stuff like that. So, but anyway, yeah, I just wanted to share that insight.
Well, as we always joke, like I am kind of like there's a reason why I like that archetype of the anarch, like the prepper anarch, like John Bircher hippie on his farm. Like there's a reason, right? I'm not millenarian though. We're not going to live through the apocalypse because the apocalypse is every day. The apocalypse is like when we turn on the app, when we wake up in the morning, it's the revelation of the dawn, it's the revelation of the dusk. All those things are apocalypse, right? So, but I agree with everything you said, Joshua, and I think it's really a fundamental point. And I think that you cannot go away from the idea of like this is the other thing though. I will say I wanted to say this when you were talking about like the idea of like farm setting. I'm not saying that I ever gave it like a full-time go, but like I mean you guys have seen pictures of my garden, you've seen pictures of the apple trees, like you've seen things that I show. Not all of it. I've never done orchard pictures because it really gets so overgrown with brambles back there that I just get all cut up if I go. I know I should bush cutter, but it's a pain in the ass, and I have other things going on. So, anyways, the the point I'm trying to make is it's really hard to make a go of it all on your own. You cannot really self-sustain on a one-man farm. I'm just going to tell you the truth. In a one-man garden, I probably could if I devoted myself all spring and summer to growing. I probably could um, manage like 70% of my own produce. But you would be limiting your diet so much. And like again, 2025, I need coffee. There are things I need in this life, and that's okay. And also, I don't tap maple trees. Like I do, but I don't tap enough to like see me through because you know I don't eat sugar. I don't know if any of you know this. Some of you do. But so I have to buy maple, but I buy it from the neighbor. So it is what it is. So but I'm just saying we cannot self-sustain alone. Like I don't make honey, but my other neighbors do. So, there's all these little like things. It's just like you can't exist. Like agree with Thoreau. Like we're born on an island in the sense of like we're in Yesod on our own in our own minds, and it can feel very disconnected. But really, we are the Bene Elohim. We are like the Hod-like beings, the sparks, the sons and daughters of man. Like we are the emanations of the Aeon. So we actually exist much better in perception, in love. Yes, in recognition of each other, in sort of like loving kindness, and in like a sort of kinship relation. I think that that's where we're much stronger. Because Hod by itself is not a super powerful Sephira. Like, yes, it can be. The word is super powerful, of course, but words by themselves sort of come and go, right? But words in a syntax, words in a coherent structure, then you're turning it into something really interesting. And if we are the Bene Elohim and we are the Hod-like representations of the Aeon in this world, then you must agree that just like with words, they exist better together. So I think that, yes, be the anarch of your own kingdom, be the sovereign of your own life. I agree 100%, like 110%, 117%. But don't become a solipsist because we are so much more powerful as a group and just with each other in like recognition of each other's humanity. Something kind of fundamental about that, regardless of religious tradition, I think. Even though I know I'm like the biggest hater myself, and like, yeah, it's really cool to hate on like all these people. And I'm not saying that there isn't a metaphysical reality. Like, I don't really think in racial terms, but I definitely think in like first world, second world, third world terms. And so I do think like first world consciousness is like what we should cultivate, like this new American consciousness where we're all the things that we're talking about are sort of like extant on the aether wave. and like we've talked about this before, like the third world consciousness is like keep each other like crabs in a bucket. This is very true. Very true. It's like keep each other down, pull each other down, tell each other, oh, your project's shit. Like, why are you even bothering? Why are you doing it? I'm not saying that the first world is free of it. I'm just saying it's like 100 million times worse. Third world people are the worst like that. They just are. They're again. It goes back to that question of like karmic predeterminism. If you don't believe there's possibility for like escape from their cycle of samsara, or their like level of suffering, why would you want anyone else to escape? Why would you want anyone else to dream higher? There's nothing more Shawnee than that. He loves a day laborer. Why is that? Because he loves to see you toil with no sort of fruit. So I just think, we exist together and we also have to be individuated. And in that is the most aeonic thing of all, the ipsos in its true individuation, in us being like sovereign individuals, but then also like as a greater network. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I'm really glad you brought that up about Shani and the labor and during the daytime, because in the daytime also we have the lunch hour, right? So that takes place when the sun is at high noon. It's greatest intensity. So to me, that's very yin yang, where you got a dot of the opposite within the other, and so in the midst of midday, you have an oasis of rest for that hour being given to you by in a sense Shawnee, right? So here's like a little bit of rest from your labor, understanding that you're laboring during the day, right? So I personally find that to be like a mercy within Saturn's labor, in a sense. And then also the other thing was a little bit of a joke. You mentioned how on Twitter time is different than the real world, and that kind of reminded me of that meme that you hear sometimes of you got to hide your power level, because when I'm in public sometimes I find myself getting carried away. I'm like, oh, I'm not on Twitter. So yeah.
Look, there's an element that I've had to learn about being on Twitter, is that people expect you to play the persona that they perceive you to have. I do not have a persona. If any of you have interacted with me privately, I'm exactly the same. I will say the exact same shit that I say, probably even more unfiltered. But I'm also like, I have a lot of, I don't want to like over self aggrandize and be like, oh yeah, I'm so layered and deep and emo and shit. But I kind of am too. So I'm multifaceted as a person. And anyone, Mike's laughing, but I am. And so the reality is you can never be the fullness of what people perceive you as. Like, so for me, it's not a LARP. I don't think for you it's a LARP, Joshua, but I do think that you lean into your character a little bit, right? Like I do that too, but I am Jin at the end of the day. Like I walk away from Twitter being the same, but I also know that there is an expectation of like a more unfiltered version of myself for sure, because I am definitely not this unfiltered in life. But I just think, wow, it is so interesting because there are people who completely become different personas when they're online that are totally like maybe like I don't know, like a dark passenger. Like it is their dark passenger. It's like their secondary personality, but it's not. It's them, but it's maybe a more occulted core or occulted aspect. But I think that part of being on Twitter is also like reconciling the sort of like disparate elements of yourself. Like that's what I try and take it as, like a working. Like you try and like say, oh, like what is this element? What is this element? And you try and bring it in to yourself, like to your actual your lived experience, your lived life. So I don't know. I just think like, yeah, I identify with you. Like I've become so much more unfiltered in life because like, usually I would just say nothing. That was my old. Like, if you talked to me 5 years ago, it was just like I would not say anything out loud, but my thoughts would be thinking the same thing. But then it's also about, like, as we talked about, it's about using the discriminating awareness to know what you should and shouldn't say. That doesn't mean that the thoughts are negative, bad, evil, ontologically incorrect, anti-cosmic, whatever sort of language you want to describe it. No, but it also means that, like, yeah, certain things should be resolved should be reserved for yourself and for your family or whatever, like, your kinship circle comprises. So it's hard. We're all like magi on the timeline. We're all trying to reconcile the opposition, as all good alchemists and good magi do. And, we don't want too much paradox. We want to resolve that paradox because at the end of the day, it's all the resolution in your own mind. So, you don't want to go to the greater heaven and, like, have so much paradox because you're just going to end up back in samsara. So, nothing worse than being born on the subcontinent, I think. I don't know. But I think that being said, wow, we'll go for we'll go for 7 more minutes exactly. But I don't know. I just think be agential, be Diamond Thunder, and like, don't be scared. Like, like, we're having a very frank and honest conversation. I know Mike has expressed many times, like, how like our conversation, not necessarily our conversations, but like the sort of greater themes that we've talked about, and that he even talks about on, like, Astro Twitter, on his own personal Twitter. It can scare the hose, but I actually posit that people who are in our network, like people who are around like me or around like you guys, we're not the normies. And maybe that's part of, like, letting it go, because, like, I've realized this about myself. I'm never going to be with a normie person. I'm never going to have normie friends. I'm never going to be able to suck it up and just be like, yeah. But can I be outward presentingly normie? Sure, 100% in a way. But I don't necessarily want to, like, sublimate myself into normiedom. I kind of like being esoteric e-chungus or whatever. Like, I'm okay with that. I've reconciled that in myself. I kind of know, like, I kind of see myself, like, a lot better now, in the sense that, like, it is kind of like an act of becoming to sort of, like, recognize yourself, perceive yourself in, like, a more multifaceted way, like, to see, like, this is actually not, like, this thing that I thought was, like, bad magic, this thing that I thought was bad or negative, like my sort of, like, appraisal of wisdom science. That's actually not taboo. That's not transgressive, because I don't take it in a transgressive way. So I think that shows, I think that demonstrates that I am able to reconcile the polarities within myself. Because if I wanted to present it in, like, edgelord, I'm the guru, you should all follow me, send me, you're all my pay pigs. Like, yeah, we could play that game too. But I don't want to play that game. That's not interesting to me. That's not, that wouldn't be in keeping with, like, higher Dharmic ideals or higher Kabbalistic ideals. So I think what is interesting for me is transformation, redemption, and also higher experiences or higher possibilities for, for spiritual unfolding, we'll say, like a flower, like a firework. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Thank you. So another thought that kind of crossed my mind was, like you just said, that it's like that exercising of it, walking the path is very necessary, and it's a different kind of quality. And so, as the emperor that's seated in the throne at home, not venturing out, it's a different mindset. Whereas you're depending on something material. Whereas as the fool, maybe it becomes a little more abstract and spiritual, and that self-reliance and self-sufficiency element kind of comes to light. And it reminds me of bushcraft, how you can challenge yourself by maybe only taking one item with you, or a couple items or whatever. Sometimes they do those intense challenges, and I think it's by also like meeting in groups like this, you mentioned earlier in the space. I think it's kind of like iron sharpens iron, how there's a synthesis added to it. By it's not just being by yourself, but being in synthesis with others. There's an element there of sharpening, and I think it adds facets to the diamond in a sense. It helps to quicken the process that would occur maybe solo or naturally. So you can quicken it, like in the hyperbolic time chamber in Dragon Ball Z. And so I think that's why Twitter is so valuable in a sense, because you can kind of speed up your development in a sense when you have these interactions. And that iron sharpens iron element kind of adds facets to us in a sense, right? So it makes you sharper. So I just think that's an interesting quality to maybe reveal, is that a gem like that requires intense stresses, because otherwise it never forms. And so I think that by the emperor just remaining seated, it's kind of more of like a prima materia. It has great potential because the wealth is very concentrated, but it's not really. So you have to make it work, kind of like Mike was mentioning earlier, or it's not. If it goes stagnant, just like Scrooge McDuck he used in his example, what it's meant to be used and it's meant to work for you. And that reminds me of the parable of the talents in the Bible, how the person that didn't use their talent or money, a resource, was kind of punished by having it taken away, and then it was given to the person who actually multiplied the talents best. And so that all kind of comes to mind too. It's not just about accumulating wealth and being static, but how to become dynamic, but also with that element of faith. So I just really enjoyed mulling that over with you guys. I appreciate the insights.
That was great. Both you and Mike and Matt, when he was here, you all did really great. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of our show. So proud of our spaces. Um, it has grown. We have grown. We've like grown together. That's what you're talking about, Joshua. Like, even me, like, I've softened some of my edges, my sharpness, my protectiveness. It's not that I'm not protective of the show or of you guys. Of course I am. Tap me in if you want to fight, or not fight with you. But I'm saying if you need me to fight for you, you tap me in. I'll go fight tech and tag tournament on the timeline. I will, but I also know that I had to let go a little, not like let go, but just be like less. I know I can be like very intense. I know this about myself. It's not new. So I just think like exactly what you're saying. Like we've there's an idea in the Temple of Set that you sort of like look at each other as sort of like reflective black material, and you sort of like serve as both a pillar of stability, but then also as a pillar of reflection, like you were saying. So when you go too far off bounds, you actually you have like these sort of reference points in people to sort of like come back to material reality. I'm not saying I'm not Temple of Set. I'm just saying it's a great idea that we also express in Dharma, but I'm just giving it kind of like my, little edgelord flair. Since Solar's not here, contemporary left-hand path, I have to do it a little. That's okay. And I also wanted to say this. So I had a podcaster hit me up about our spaces and about our appearances on the Occult Rejects, like as a lodge, me and the other brothers. And they identify as like a Marxist Leninist, and they were kind of like testing me, and they thought I didn't really get it, but they were kind of testing me and seeing like how much of a left hand path edgelord I am. But like the reality is like I wouldn't tell anybody about anything because I'm not dumb and I'm not 20 years old. Not that being 20 is bad, it's not. But I'm just saying that it's like I'm a little too jaded for those games to work on me. So, but I just wanted to say, in reference to that podcaster who's probably listening, being a Marxist Leninist is exactly the same as being a sort of like satanic accelerationist, which is what they purportedly study. It's no different. You want to destroy America? Okay, well, if you're saying that these people do, so do you. So, like, reconcile that polarity in yourself, like we've done for almost 2 years, or a year and a half, or a year and like 7 months in these spaces. Like, like it's one thing to study like all this transgressive material, but then like show me a clip that we've talked about it in like a transgressive way. Never. And it's not because we don't acknowledge that it could be in potentiality, but also that we bring each other into sort of like a normalization of like what we're talking about, the content and the character, and sort of like there's the overarching theme. Like we kind of normalize the conversations that we're having by being in synthesis. So that's a perfect place, I think, to end it. Obviously, check out Mike. Follow. I know Joshua's locked, but he'll follow you back. Mike will also follow you back. But follow Joshua, follow Solar, follow Matt Murrah, tip Matt Murrah, give him a little, little $5 for his trip for America, so you can buy some peanuts at the airport. And he's just, check his site out. Check out thetruegraylodge.com, Graylodge.com. Like and subscribe to our YouTube, and check out Threshold Saints. I have an episode dropping tomorrow with one of our lodge members, Vicky at Redacted Vampire, on what subject? Final Fantasy VIII. Wow, that was so clever, Jen, to drop it right during the discourse of Final Fantasy. I knew I had to just wait until the cycle popped up again, and I knew it would happen. So look out for that tomorrow. Solar and I, yeah, we're doing it. Two big people, and I have a lot more coming. I'm actually overwhelmed with the amount of people who've asked me to come on the show, and so I'm very happy and very hopeful, and I'm very. I just want to say this: whatever changes we've had and undergone in the lodge, I personally feel a lot better about it. I'm okay to burn off the klipas, the dead weight, the sort of like negative elements that existed in the past. I think it was important. I think it was a good reflection of myself, in the sense that like I could see how I dealt with it. I didn't go mauled on the timeline. I didn't have like some kind of crazy outburst. Yeah, I deleted a couple times, but I came back. It could have been so much worse. I'd never had like some kind of crazy meltdown. I didn't like, it is what it is. But I feel freer. I feel happier. And I also think that it's like the Nagas who stayed, they fucking stayed because they fucking liked it. They fucking like our shit. And they want to, as I always say, like, you have to fuck with the people who fuck with you. Right? So thank you all. Plus Ultra. The Grey Lodge, Days of Diamond Thunder. Yes, this is part 2, so I apologize to Matt Murrah. He'll have to somehow splice them all together. But otherwise, love is a cause of knowledge. Do your sadhana. What else? Be Diamond Thunder, be Quicksilver Surfers, Aeon of Man, Aeon of the Daughter. Let's fucking go. Go out and conquer the new world, the Hapaborean kingdom, and go out and conquer yourselves. So there you go. Have a great night.